Chapter 141. The room was silent for a moment, and Lu Buwang's voice interrupted He Yan's recollection. What about you? He asked. Ehe, how did you become like this now? Did you disguise yourself? Young Master Qiao shouldn't be your husband. It was a long story. He Yan lowered his head and smiled, saying, Master, I'm not He Rufei anymore. I'm He Yan. That person is my superior. We came to Jiang to find someone, so we pretended to be husband and wife. As for disguising myself, I didn't disguise myself. I look like this now. I can't come back to my original appearance. Lu Buwang thought for a moment, then nodded and said, I see. He was always like this. He had a sense of propriety when it came to other people's affairs. If other people didn't want to talk about it, he wouldn't deliberately inquire about it. In some people's eyes, this would seem a little cold, but for He Yan, not asking about it was already the greatest blessing. After a while, Cui Jiao knocked on the door and walked out, still holding the little girl's hand. This little girl seemed to have worn off the effects of the drug, and was able to walk with more strength. Her face had been washed clean, and she looked like she was only a little over 10 years old. She was beautiful and quick-witted, and her eyes were as moving as black jade, slim and elegant. Cui Jiao combed her hair with long braids, which were the favorite style of Jiang girls. Her hair was braided to the front and hung down to her chest. There was also a circle of small bells. Her clothes were Red Riding clothes, which she asked the housekeeper of the Cui residence for. When she walked over, the jingling sounds were delicate and cute, and she looked more valiant and heroic than ordinary girls. Lu Buwang looked at her, and was slightly absent-minded. He Yan asked with a smile, Have you eaten? Cui Jiao looked embarrassed. Madam, the little miss refuses to eat. He Yan asked, Why don't you eat? Aren't you hungry? The little girl turned her head to the side and ignored her words. She was quite arrogant. Maybe because she ate something wrong before, she doesn't want to trust others anymore. Lu Buwang chuckled and looked at the little girl. Little girl, since we have saved you from the thieves, we won't hurt you anymore. Otherwise, we wouldn't have brought you back to the residence. You can rest assured. If you don't believe me, we can eat together. This way, you won't have to go hungry, and you won't have to worry about any problems. Lu Buwang's gentleness always carried a faint alienation. In addition, his manner was natural and elegant, so it was easy for people to have a good impression of him. And this little girl was no exception. She stared into his eyes for a while, then said, All right. In the end, his attitude softened. He Yan heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly asked Cui Jiao to prepare some food that children like to eat. Cui Jiao retreated as she was told. Lu Buwang said with a smile, What's your name? Xiaolu. In front of Lu Buwang, the little girl was less arrogant and more well-behaved. Good name. Lu Buwang said with a smile. Which family are you from? How did you get kidnapped? At this point, Xiaolu shut his mouth and refused to say anything more. He Yan and Lu Buwang looked at each other. This child was quite defensive. They didn't know what he had encountered before. While they were thinking, Xiaolu's gaze fell on the long zither on the table. She looked at it for a while and asked Lu Buwang, Is this your zither? Good taste, He Yan thought. She can tell at a glance that this kind of romantic thing doesn't suit me. Yes. Can you play the zither? Lu Buwang answered. Yes. Play a song for me, Xiaolu said. How can this child be so good at ordering people around? He Yan didn't comment. Although Lu Buwang carried a zither with him, he rarely played it. When He Yan was his disciple, he also asked him to play. But Lu Buwang refused every time. But this time, Lu Buwang's answer was beyond He Yan's expectations. He just looked at Xiaolu gently and smiled. Okay. He Yan said. Master? Whose master was he? What do you want to hear? He even asked Xiaolu gently. Xiaolu played with the braid in front of her chest and shook her head. I don't know. You can play whatever you like best. He lowered his head and seriously asked Xiaolu for her opinion. Is slow time okay? I haven't heard of it. Xiaolu nodded. Play it. He Yan was speechless. Lu Buwang was more obedient to Xiaolu than to his disciple. If it weren't for the age difference, He Yan would almost suspect that Xiaolu was Lu Buwang's long-lost daughter. The little girl sat on the high platform with her feet up and down. Lu Buwang put the zither on the table and sat down in front of the table. He wiped his hands and plucked the strings. He actually rarely heard Lu Buwang play the zither. Occasionally, when he got up in the middle of the night to go to the outhouse, he heard the faint sound of the zither. He thought he had bumped into a ghost and was so scared that he trembled. Later, he plucked up his courage and went to take a look, only to find that it was Lu Buwang. When she was young, she didn't understand why Lu Buwang wanted to play the zither in the courtyard in the middle of the night. She only felt that the sound of the zither was indescribably sad. Later, after experiencing many things and gradually growing up, she gradually understood that her master was also a person with a story. In Lu Buwang's past life, there might have been such a person who engraved a deep stroke in his experience, so that he could only miss her through the sound of the zither at night. Now that they hadn't seen each other for many years, the sadness and loss in his sound of the zither were even deeper. Willows in the West City softened in spring. Moving the sorrow of separation, it's hard to stop the tears. Still remembering the affection, it was once tied to the boat. What happened on the green field and the red bridge that day? The people disappeared, the water flowed empty. Youth doesn't flow for young people. Hatred lasts for a long time. When will it stop? When the catkins fall. As soon as I climb the stairs, the spring river is full of tears, endless and sorrowful. Xiaolu was young, so he didn't know that the sound of the zither was sad. He only felt that the sound of the zither was pleasant and romantic. However, Yan felt that Lu Buwang seemed to be bidding farewell to something in the sound of the zither. Something was about to leave his life, mixed with reluctance and loss, and would never come back. Lin Shuanghe and Xiao Ju had entered the room at some point. Lin Shuanghe walked to Yan's side and whispered, "Sister, your master plays the zither really well. It's as good as Huaijin. It's just a little too sad." Even Lin Shuanghe could hear it. Yan sighed slightly. However, even though she had been Lu Buwang's master for many years, Yan also felt that she had never really entered Lu Buwang's heart. She didn't know what kind of person Lu Buwang was, and what he had done in the past, and Lu Buwang didn't mention anything about it. He was like a person who had abandoned the past, but he wasn't serious about the future. He was so casual that he seemed to be able to leave at any time without leaving any traces. After the song's slow time was played, the sound lingered in the room. Xiaolu looked at him and suddenly clapped. She smiled and said, "I once heard my grandmother play this song, but she didn't play it as well as you. You played it much better. What's your name?" Lu Buwang patted her head and said, "You can call me Layman Yunlin." "That's too long." Xiaolu wasn't satisfied with his answer. "Isn't your surname Lu?" Lin Shuanghe agreed with Xiaolu's words and said, "It's really good. Even in Shuajing, it can be ranked among the top. It's just..." He looked at Yan and asked in confusion, "Sister He, I don't want to criticize you, but your master's zither skills are unparalleled, and your husband is extremely elegant. How can you play the zither like this? Didn't your master teach you how to play the zither?" Yan said expressionlessly, "My master only taught me martial arts. As for my husband..." Xiao Ju stood beside her and raised her eyebrows slightly, waiting for her to continue. Yan cleared her throat and said, "You can just play it for me. Why do I have to learn this?" Lin Shuanghe. After a while he nodded and said, "It's really an irrefutable reason." Cui Jiao served the dishes. Yan had already eaten with Xiao Ju, so only Lu Buwang and Xiao Lu were eating together. Xiao Lu didn't seem to like eating with others. She showed discomfort several times. She probably let Lu Buwang eat with her because she didn't want to worry that there was no poison in the food. Lu Buwang also understood the little girl's thoughts. He only took a little bit of each dish with his chopsticks and stopped eating. Xiaolu was very picky with her food, but she still ate some rice. Yan breathed a sigh of relief and said to Xiao Ju, "Now we're waiting for Lord Cui to come back. Ask whose child she is and send her back." Speaking of the devil, Zhong Fu's voice came from outside. "Lord Young Master Qiao and Miss Yuyan have already returned and brought back 2 guests. They are now eating in the room. Young Master Qiao seems to have something to ask Lord Cui." Then Cui Yueji's rough voice came, "Got it." The door curtain was lifted and Cui Yueji's voice came from behind the door. "Huanqing Yan, you're back? Do you have something urgent to ask me? Her Highness summoned me early this morning." I can't stay in the mansion for long. I have to go out later. His voice stopped abruptly when he saw Xiao Lu's face. He was stunned for a moment and his voice changed a little. Young Highness, why are you here? Xiao Lu, the little girl who had been arrogant since He Yan brought her back, put down her chopsticks and looked at Cui Yuezhi. She raised her chin and said proudly, Cui Zhongqi, you're finally here. Young Highness? Everyone in the room was very surprised. Cui Yuezhi took a step forward and half knelt in front of Xiao Lu. His voice was very anxious. Her Highness summoned me early this morning and said that Young Highness disappeared last night. Her Highness was very worried. Why is Young Highness here? He turned to look at He Yan. He Yan, what's going on? He Yan also wanted to know what was going on. She had already guessed that this little girl's identity was not ordinary, but she never thought that she would be Young Highness. Last night, Yan and I fell asleep on the fallen firefly boat. Early in the morning, we were planning to hire a carriage to return to the mansion. On the way, we encountered Young Highness being kidnapped and saved Young Highness from the hands of criminals. Xiao Ju answered Cui Yuezhi on behalf of He Yan. Among the people who kidnapped Young Highness, one of them is dead and the others escaped. When Yi Yan and I rescued Young Highness, we didn't know who they were. Hearing this, Cui Yuezhi was shocked and asked Xiao Lu, Young Highness was kidnapped? Does Young Highness know who they are? Xiao Lu didn't seem to want to mention this matter and said impatiently, How would I know? As soon as I left the mansion, I met them near the canal. I didn't think they were bad people, but who knew? Speaking of this, he said angrily, They have evil intentions and deserve to be killed. Cui Yuezhi asked Xiao Lu again, Young Highness, are you hurt? No. Xiao Lu muttered, looked at Lu Buwang and pointed at him. I was almost killed by someone, but this person, this lay Buddhist Yunlin, saved me. Only then did Cui Yuezhi see that there was a stranger in the room. Seeing that Lu Buwang had an extraordinary bearing, he bowed deeply and said, Thank you for saving me. May I know your name? This is my master Wu, Xiao Ju said lightly. He taught me martial arts back then. We haven't seen each other for many years, and didn't expect to meet each other in Jiang. Uncle can call him Yunlin. It turns out to be Mr. Yunlin. Cui Yu was stunned, and he had a better impression of Lu Buwang. He said, I'm going to the mansion to send His Little Highness back. Mr. Yunlin might as well go with me. If Her Highness knows that Mr. saved His Little Highness's life, she will definitely thank Mr. Lu Buwang smiled slightly and said to Cui Yuezhi, Yunlin has long been an outsider. Yunlin appreciates your kindness. As for the reward, forget it. When I saved Young Highness, I didn't know that Xiao Lu was Young Highness. This kind of capable person probably had a bit of a proud and aloof temperament, which Cui Yuezhi could understand. Besides, he was Qiao Huanqing's master. There would be plenty of opportunities to befriend him in the future, so there was no hurry. The most important thing now was to send Mu Xiaolu back to the mansion. Mu Hongjin was about to go crazy. Cui Yuezhi said to Lu Buwang, In this case, I won't force you. Lu Buwang smiled and nodded. Young Highness, do you still want to eat? Cui Yuezhi looked at Mu Xiaolu. If you're done, follow me back to the mansion. Young Highness will be very happy to see you safe and sound. Mu Xiaolu jumped down from the stool and said, Got it. Prepare a soft sedan. With that, she was about to go out with Cui Yuezhi. When she passed by Lu Buwang, she stopped and asked unwillingly, You really don't want to go back with me? Will my grandmother reward you with a lot of gold? You can have whatever you want. Lu Buwang bent down and gently rubbed her hair. It's fine as long as Young Highness is safe. Cui Yuezhi was a little surprised. Mu Xiaolu had been spoiled by Mu Hongjin since she was a child. She was very picky about others, but she was very close to Lu Buwang. They were both martial artists, and Cui Yuezhi could feel that Lu Buwang's kung fu was not shallow. If this person could stay in the mansion and accompany Young Highness, he could accompany Young Highness and protect Young Highness. But these things had to be discussed after seeing Mu Hongjin. He turned to look at He Yan and Huanqing. You Yan Huanqing, pack up and immediately follow me to the mansion. You saved Young Highness, so Her Highness must have a lot of questions to ask you. Sooner or later, you will have to go to the mansion. Why don't we do it today? He Yan and Xiao Ju looked at each other. He Yan said, Okay, uncle. Cui Yuezhi took Mu Xiaolu out. He Yan said to Lu Buwang, "Master, you stay in the mansion first. If there's anything, wait for us to come back." She was afraid that Lu Buwang would leave without saying goodbye after returning to the mansion, so she told Lin Shuanghe, "Brother Lin, please take care of my master first. Don't let him act alone." Lu Buwang looked at her and smiled helplessly. Lin Shuanghe immediately understood He Yan's meaning and said, "No problem. I guarantee that when you come back, Master Lu will still be like this. Not a single hair is missing." He Yan was relieved. He asked Hongxiao to comb his hair again, changed into clean clothes and washed up. Then he followed Xiao Ju out of the Cui mansion. As he walked, he asked Xiao Ju in a low voice, "Commander-in-Chief, why did you say that my master is your master Wu?" She also said Layman Yunlin, instead of Lu Buwang. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. "Your master seems to be very unwilling to reveal his identity. If he says that he's my master, at least people won't be suspicious." That was true. He Yan was thinking about it when he suddenly heard Xiao Ju say, "But your master's identity is not simple. He seems to be an old acquaintance of Her Highness." He Yan was horrified. How can that be? The way he looked at Mu Xiaolu seemed to be looking at someone else through Mu Xiaolu. If I'm not wrong, he should be Her Highness. Xiao Ju said unhurriedly. "As a disciple, how come you don't know anything?" "He didn't tell me anything." He Yan couldn't hide the shock in his heart. Lu Buwang and Mu Hongjin were old acquaintances? This was the most shocking news he had heard today. But He Yan faintly felt that what Xiao Ju said might be true. Lu Buwang's gentleness and doting towards Mu Xiaolu, the sadness in the zither, and his refusal to go to the prince's mansion with Cui Yuezhi seemed to indicate one thing. At least, Lu Buwang was not completely unrelated to the Mu family. But what exactly was their relationship? He didn't get an answer to this question. Cui Yuezhi had already urged them to set off for the prince's mansion. Mu Xiaolu sat in a soft palanquin, while He Yan and the others sat in a carriage. Cui Yuezhi personally escorted them, and the guards were all wearing armor and carrying swords. It was probably because Mu Xiaolu had said that she was kidnapped yesterday, which made people feel that Jiang City was not as peaceful and safe as it seemed on the surface. The prince's mansion was located north of the center of Jiang City, and it occupied a large area. As soon as they arrived at the gate of the mansion, soldiers came up to interrogate them. Cui Yuezhi took them into the prince's mansion. He first took Mu Xiaolu in, then asked He Yan and Xiao Ju to wait in the outer hall. He would call them in later. He Yan and Xiao Ju sat in the outer hall. Feeling bored, He Yan asked Xiao Ju, "Governor, do you know Princess Mingji?" "I don't know much about her." Xiao Ju lazily said, "I only know that King Mingji had a son and a daughter. His eldest son died before he was 18 years old. At that time, King Mingji's position was not very stable. If his position was not stable, he needed to unite forces to consolidate it. His Majesty was benevolent, but there were always confidants who did not like the vassal king's power. They wanted to eliminate all the vassal kings in Dawei. In the end, Princess Mengji married the son of an important official in the imperial court. Her husband was a member of the imperial court, so he could monitor Jiang City at any time to see if there was any rebellion. It was also because of this that King Mingji was able to keep his position as a vassal king. However, the son of the official who was Princess Mingji's husband died of illness not long after Princess Mingji gave birth to a son. Their son also had the same problem as their father. He was born with a congenital deficiency, so their daughter died when she was young. Therefore, there were only Princess Mingji and her granddaughter, Mu Xiaolu, in the current King Mingji's residence. He Yan was not particularly curious about Mu Hongjin, but after hearing Xiao Ju's words, he knew that this person might be an old acquaintance of Lu Buwang. He had some expectations and wanted to know who had appeared in Lu Buwang's past life. Lu Buwang treated Mu Xiaolu so well. If a man treated a little girl well, it was very likely that it was because of this little girl's family, if it wasn't because of his gentle nature. After the two of them sat for a while, a maidservant in gauze clothes with braided hair came forward with a smile and said, "Please come with me. His Highness wants to see you." He Yan and Xiao Ju stood up and followed the maidservant inside. As soon as they entered the residence, They were surprised to find that the interior of the residence was bigger and more spacious than it looked from the outside. It could be said to be magnificent. The color of the residence was mainly red, and the railings and pillars in the residence were carved with myths and legends about the water god. In the backyard of the residence, there was even a bronze statue of a bare-chested goddess riding a kuan and traveling in the sea. The weather in Jiang was hot, unlike the bitter cold in Liangzhou. It was only spring, and when the sun shone in the morning, it was a little hot. Copper basins filled with ice cubes were placed in the four corners of the courtyard, so it didn't feel hot and was cool and pleasant. As for the flowers, plants, and trees, they gave off the same feeling as Jiang City. Prosperous, lively, ostentatious, and proud. After passing through the courtyard and the long corridor, the maidservant stopped in front of the King Mingji's residence and said with a smile, "Please come in." He Yan and Xiaoju stepped in and felt that their eyes suddenly brightened. The main hall was very wide, and there were columns carved with the pattern of the water god in the four corners. Above them, there was a painting of auspicious cloud patterns. The floor was covered with a thin blanket, which was as clear as gauze and decorated with some gold sparkling. For a moment, He Yan felt that the legendary Dragon Palace was probably like this. It had a kind of wild and mysterious beauty to it. There was a main seat in the hall and side seats, but there was no one on them at the moment. The princess wasn't here? While He Yan was puzzled, he heard footsteps coming from behind the hall. Then, someone walked out from the high seat at the back of the hall. It was a very beautiful woman. She was very tall and thin. She was a little old, but she didn't look like a beauty past her prime. She wore a red robe, and the corners of her robe were embroidered with the shape of waves with gold thread. Her black hair was combed into a long braid, and she wore a small golden crown on the top of her head. Her skin was very white, but her eyes were very dark, and there was a hint of red at the corners of her eyes. Her facial features were gorgeous and deep, but her expression was a little cold. Even though there was a slight smile on her lips, it was a smile that was high and mighty. It was as if she was standing on a cliff, and it was a frosty flower that bloomed brilliantly and coldly. One could only look at it from afar and not approach it. It was rare to see a woman with such a threatening aura. She was already very beautiful, but her arrogance made her beauty a burden. Mu Hongjin walked out slowly and sat down on the high seat in the middle. She looked down at He Yan and Xiaoju. He Yan tugged at the corner of Xiaoju's clothes, lowered his head, and said respectfully, "Greetings, Your Highness." No one answered for a long time. Just when He Yan thought that Mu Hongjin would continue to remain silent, Mu Hongjin spoke. Her voice was also very cold, gorgeous, and unbridled. It seeped into people's hearts. I don't know why the commander-in-chief of the Right Corps is so free that he didn't hesitate to disguise himself as someone else to come to Jiang. Chapter 142. I didn't know why the commander-in-chief of the Right Army was so free that he didn't hesitate to disguise himself as someone else to come to Jiang. He Yan thought, have I been discovered? Judging from her tone, she didn't seem to have just discovered me. He looked at Xiaoju again. She wasn't surprised at all. She just smiled lazily and said, "Your Highness, is this how you treat Little Highness's savior? You're denouncing them?" "They're guilty," Mu Hongjin said coldly. "You're not innocent either. You can't have come to Jiang just to see if I'm doing well." "It seems that Your Highness is doing well." Xiaoju raised her eyebrows. "But it's not necessarily the case for the other people in Jiang City." Mu Hongjin sat on the high seat and stared at Xiaoju for a while. Then she suddenly smiled. With this smile, the cold and unapproachable look just now suddenly melted a lot. She leaned back against the soft cushion and pointed to the guest chair beside her. "Sit down. Don't say that I've neglected a guest from afar." He Yan thanked her and sat down with Xiaoju on the side seat. This was Princess Mingji Mu Hongjin. He Yan looked at her and felt that she was different from what he had imagined. Before coming to Jiang, He Yan's impression of Princess Mingji was that she was a bit older, kind, dignified, and steady. Later, he guessed that she might be Lu Buwang's old acquaintance, so he thought that she might be a straightforward and righteous person. However, he didn't expect that Mu Hongjin in reality was so beautiful, powerful, domineering, and unrestrained. "Your Highness." He Yan hesitated for a moment before asking, "When did you find out?" Do you think that it's so easy to enter Jiang City? Or do you think that I'm just a decoration? You can't even see through this. Mu Hongjin stroked a translucent ruby ring on her finger and said lightly, I've known since the first day you entered the city. That idiot Cui Yuezhi can't see through it, but it doesn't mean that everyone is as stupid as him. I was waiting to see what you were up to, but since you saved Xiao Lu, I won't beat around the bush with you. She looked at Xiao Ju and said, Tell me, Military Governor Xiao, why did you come to Jiang City? I'm here to find someone. His name is Qianqi, Xiao Ju said. He used to be my father's subordinate. After the Battle of Mingshui, he disappeared. I found his whereabouts. He is in Jiang. However, no one has been found yet. As for the Tsuiwei Pavilion, it was burned down half a month ago. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Since Your Highness already knows our identities, I would like to ask for Your Highness' help. With Your Highness' help, it shouldn't be difficult to investigate someone in Jiang City. Mu Hongjin's smile faded slightly. Military Governor Xiao couldn't have foreseen this day, and planned to use my hands to do things for you, right? Xiao Ju smiled. How dare you? He Yan was secretly speechless. They were in Mu Hongjin's territory now, and they didn't have any soldiers with them. Xiao Ju not only didn't tuck her tail between her legs, but also dared to talk back to Mu Hongjin. Even He Yan felt that her attitude of asking for help was too much, let alone Mu Hongjin. The young man said carelessly, Yudo has infiltrated Jiang City. Your Highness must be very distressed these days. Qianqi might have clues about Yudo. Your Highness helping me is helping yourself. Mu Hongjin stared at him. Why should I believe you? You won't lose anything if you believe me. Xiao Ju's voice was calm. It depends on what Your Highness is most worried about. The hall was silent for a moment, and slowly, the sound of applause could be heard. Mu Hongjin clapped her hands and stared at Xiao Ju. It was hard to tell whether it was fear or admiration. She said, General Feng Yun really lives up to her reputation. Even if you don't become a general, you can still do a good job as a counselor. Your Highness is overpraising me. Mu Hongjin stood up and said, You're right. Yudo has infiltrated Jiang City. I've been worried about this for a long time. But how can you prove that the person you're looking for knows about Yudo's clues? Jiang City has always been easy to get out but difficult to get in. Qianqi has infiltrated Jiang for many years, and Yudo has entered Jiang as if there's no one there. There must be a connection. In Your Highness's mansion, there must be someone among the officials of Jiang who colluded with the Yudo to create loopholes in Jiang City. It must be done by one person. Whether it's Qianqi or Yudo, they both used the Yudo as an excuse to enter the city. Xiao Ju said calmly, Your Highness wants to clean up the Yudo, but with Your Highness's current ability, it's already difficult. Mu Hongjin smiled. Oh, why would I be difficult? Because of Xiao Lu. Mu Hongjin's smile faded. He Yan understood the meaning of Xiao Ju's words. After King Mengji's wife passed away, at least she left behind a son who was able to hold the position of king. However, after her son passed away, she was only left with a granddaughter who was still young. Although a woman could inherit the position of king and become a princess, if it was that simple, Mu Hongjin would not have been married off to the son of an important official in the imperial court to stabilize her power. The huge mansion was only supported by two women, a pair of grandmother and granddaughter. Many people were eyeing the mansion covetously. With internal and external troubles, Mu Hongjin would not be as relaxed as she looked. Military Governor Xiao is wise and observant. Mu Hongjin sighed. Ever since my son passed away, the people in Jiang City have been unstable. Xiao Lu is still young, so she can't take on big responsibilities. The aristocratic families have already formed their own factions and have fallen apart. They're like loose sand, so it's easy for others to take advantage of them. However, she paused and looked at Xiao Ju. Yudo has infiltrated Jiang, so I'm afraid that the situation in Dawei's central plains will not be stable. Your Highness is wise. So, Mu Hongjin raised her chin slightly. Do you want to work with me? If Your Highness is willing, Xiao Ju smiled slightly. I'll be happy to. Mu Hongjin nodded. I'll send people to search for Qianqi's whereabouts in the city. If he's still alive, I promise you that I'll be able to find him no matter where he hides. However, you have to promise me. Her eyes flashed with a hint of cunning. General Fengyan is said to be a godly strategist. You and I will work together to solve the Yudo's predicament in Jiang City. This time, she used I instead of this highness, which meant that she was putting herself on the same level as Xiaoju in order to seek cooperation. Xiaoju nodded. Of course. Since she had already spoken, Mu Hongjin's face was no longer as cold as before. She even showed a friendly smile. Cui Yuezhi asked you to come all the way to the palace, and waited in the outer hall for a long time. I'm sure you haven't eaten yet. Since you're here, you should eat before you leave. Xiao Lu will change his clothes so that he can personally thank you. She looked at He Yan again with a hint of interest in her eyes. However, I didn't expect that military governor Xiao would choose a married man to come to Jiang. Is this person your lover? He Yan almost choked on his own saliva. He knew that the people of Jiang were straightforward, but he was still surprised that the princess was so direct. Xiaoju glanced at her and said lightly, "No, she's my subordinate." Subordinate? Mu Hongjin smiled and said, "But I heard from Yuezhi that you went to the Water God Festival together yesterday. You even walked across Lover's Bridge for her, and rode on the Firefly boat. With military governor Zhao's temperament, he wouldn't be so accommodating to a subordinate. As a subordinate, isn't it a little too bold to make such a request?" He Yan pondered in his heart. She was implying that she should restrain herself in the future. After thinking for a while, she bowed and said respectfully, "He Yan will listen to your highness's teachings. He will be careful with his words and actions in the future, and will not cause trouble for the governor." Mu Hongjin was stunned for a moment. She looked at Xiaoju. "You really are a subordinate?" Xiaoju was silent for a moment. She said calmly, "Your Highness, please don't laugh at my incompetence." "It's fine. That's your business." Mu Hongjin stroked her hair and said, "I'll go find Cui Yuezhi first and tell him to help you find someone. You two wait here for a moment." After saying that, she stood up from the high seat and slowly disappeared into the back of the hall. He Yan waited for her to leave before he breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't know why, but he always felt that he couldn't be too relaxed in front of Princess Mingji. It was probably because her aura was too strong, making it difficult for people to ignore her. "Governor, why did you admit it so quickly just now?" He Yan touched Xiaoju's elbow. "You didn't even try to quibble." Xiaoju sneered. "Not everyone is a liar like you." He Yan shrugged and changed the topic. "But this Princess Mingji is really good. She discovered us the moment we entered the city." "I didn't intend to hide it from him," Xiaoju said carelessly. "Cui Yuezhi can still be perfunctory. How can a woman who can stabilize Jiang City with her own strength be so easy to fool?" "Yes." He Yan agreed with her words. Women are not easy to fool when they don't act on their emotions. But if they like and trust someone, it would be too easy to be fooled. Xiaoju glanced at her and said slowly, "But some women are not easy to fool, and they like to deceive people." "He Yan," she said, "what you said is meaningless. Who's deceiving you?" As they were talking, a maid from the prince's mansion walked in and said, "Please follow me. His Highness invites you to eat in the banquet hall." He Yan and Xiaoju then walked to the banquet hall. The banquet hall of the prince's mansion was also very big. Although the walls and ceiling were painted with colorful paintings, and the floor was covered with bright-colored blankets, because there were very few people at the long tables, it was still a little empty at first. The magnificent emptiness made people feel even more lonely. Mu Hongjin sat on a small couch at the long table and said, "Sit." He Yan and Xiaoju sat down at the table. "I don't know what you like to eat, so make yourselves comfortable." Mu Hongjin seemed to be a little tired and leaned against the soft cushion. "I asked Cui Yuezhi to go back first. It's not convenient for him to talk here." Cui Yuezhi still did not know Xiaoju and Xiaoju's identities, so it was indeed inconvenient for him. The food in the prince's mansion was not much different from the food in the Cui mansion. However, He Yan was not very particular about food. He was happy as long as there was something to eat. He immediately thanked Mu Hongjin and picked up his chopsticks reservedly. He also remembered that the person in front of him was Princess Mingji, so it was not good for him to be presumptuous. Therefore he ate more politely. Mu Hongjin looked at Xiaoju. Military Governor Xiao, if the Yudo sneaked into Jiang, what is their motive? Wei. That one sentence made He Yan's action of drinking the soup stop, and he instantly felt that the delicious food was tasteless. Once the Yudo gains power and attacks Jiang, the first thing they will do is to cut off the water supply of the canal. The cities along the river will be affected by the disaster. There will be no food or money, and the merchants will go on strike. The Central Plains will be in chaos. Then they will head north, enter the capital, and attack the palace, he said calmly. There is nothing more natural than this. Mu Hongjin was silent for a moment before she said, Military Governor Xiao makes it sound so easy for you to say such a shocking thing. Because it's about to happen. Xiaoju said, not now. Early on, during the battle between Father and the southern barbarians at Mingshui, there were already clues. Southern barbarians? This was the first time Mu Hongjin heard of this. She was puzzled. What does it have to do with the southern barbarians? There is a traitor in the imperial court who colluded with the southern barbarians in the past. Unfortunately, the southern barbarians' rebellion was quelled, and the Yudo kingdom was far away. It has been peaceful all these years, and it has been accumulating power in secret. Therefore, he changed his target of cooperation from the southern barbarians to the Yudo kingdom. Jiang is the first city to be used to claim credit. Mu Hongjin placed her hand on her chest and frowned. Jiang has not fought for many years. Allow me to ask. Xiaoju asked. How many soldiers are there in Jiang now? Less than 20,000. He Yan frowned when he heard this. Less than 20,000 was not a number that could make one feel at ease. After all, there were more than 20,000 Liang province guards. Doesn't Military Governor Xiao have the southern prefecture soldiers under his command? Mu Hongjin asked. Can the southern prefecture soldiers be transferred to Jiang? It's too late, Xiaoju said. He Yan and Mu Hongjin were both stunned. Mu Hongjin said coldly, Is Military Governor Xiao exaggerating to scare us? Your Highness already knows the truth. If it wasn't urgent, Xiaoju's expression was still calm. Your Highness wouldn't have been kidnapped during the Water God Festival. Mu Xiaolu was a part of their plan. However, they coincidentally encountered He Yan and the others, and the plan was disrupted. It could be imagined that if He Yan and the others hadn't appeared that day, and Mu Xiaolu had been successfully kidnapped, there would be two outcomes. The first was that the news of Her Highness' disappearance spread, and the entire Jiang city was in a state of panic. The princess would no longer have an heir, and the people's hearts would be in chaos. The aristocratic families would cause trouble, and the people hiding in the dark would take the opportunity to stir up trouble and directly take the throne. The second was even simpler. They would use Mu Xiaolu as a bargaining chip to negotiate with Mu Hongjin. If Mu Hongjin doted on this granddaughter, she would directly hand over the throne. Then the other party would be able to take over the entire Jiang city, without expending a single soldier. Regardless of the outcome, it was not something that the current Jiang city could bear. You mean? Mu Hongjin asked. Let's prepare for a fierce battle, Xiaoju replied. This topic was too serious. Everyone in the banquet hall was silent for a moment. At that moment, a crisp voice rang out. Grandmother. It was Mu Xiaolu. Mu Xiaolu had already changed her clothes. She was also wearing a bright red robe with golden lotus flowers embroidered on it. It was gorgeous and exquisite. She didn't wear a golden crown. Her two braids hung down in front of her chest, and there was a little ornament on her forehead. She looked like a young Mu Hongjin, a girl from a different race. However, compared to Mu Hongjin's domineering beauty, Mu Xiaolu was more delicate and arrogant. After returning to the familiar residence, Mu Xiaolu was no longer as silent as she was in the Chui residence. She ran over like a little bird and jumped onto Mu Hongjin's soft couch. She nestled beside Mu Hongjin and asked, Grandmother, why isn't Chui Zhongqi here? Chui Zhongqi is busy. Mu Hongjin was much more affectionate when facing Mu Xiaolu. She smiled and patted her head. Your saviors are here. Hurry up and thank them. Mu Xiaolu turned her head and looked at He Yan and Xiaoju. After a while she said in a small voice, Thank you for saving me. She didn't want to lose face. He Yan didn't argue with her and asked Mu Hongjin, Little Highness, how did you end up in the hands of those bad people that day? Could it be that those bad people had infiltrated the residence? If that was the case, those bad people were too daring. Mu Hongjin looked at Mu Xiaolu. You say it yourself. It's nothing. Mu Xiaolu looked at her grandmother's expression. After a while, she said, I wanted to go to the Water God Festival and didn't want the guards to follow me, so I left the residence. On the way, I met those people who said they could help me get on the Firefly boat. After I got on the boat, I couldn't move after drinking tea. Then I met you. She said it lightly, probably because she was afraid of being scolded by Mu Hongjin. It could be assumed that she had experienced many dangers. However, it was normal for a child of this age to want to play. Mu Hongjin only had this one granddaughter. She was usually very strict, afraid that something would happen to her. It was reasonable for a child to want to go out and play by herself. It was just that her luck wasn't too good, and she had been targeted early on. I really have to thank you. Mu Hongjin sighed. If something really happened to Xiaolu, I don't know how to continue living. Your Highness, please don't say that. Little Highness is blessed by the heavens. Even if she didn't meet us, she would have met someone else. She will definitely be safe. Mu Xiaolu heard this and muttered. It wasn't you who saved me in the first place. It was this uncle who saved me. Then she looked at Hien. That uncle isn't coming today? When can he come? Go back and tell him that I want to see him. Can he come to the residence to play with me? It was the first time Mu Hongjin had heard of such a person. She asked in confusion, What uncle? It's an uncle who looks like an immortal. Mu Xiaolu became happy and gestured to Mu Hongjin. He's very tall and wears white clothes. He's very strong. When I was caught, he knocked over the knife as soon as he appeared. He has a sword and a chain on his back. Mu Hongjin's expression gradually stiffened. Hien complained incessantly in his heart. He only hoped that this little ancestor would stop talking and not continue. However, Mu Xiaolu seemed to have a good impression of Lu Buwang. Speaking of this, she beamed with joy and wished she could tell Mu Hongjin everything she knew. He also knows how to play the qin. He played the qin for me. It's the song that grandmother often plays. But he plays it much better than you. He said that the song seems to be called Slow Time. Grandmother, why have I never heard you mention the name of this song? Is it really called that? Mu Hongjin looked at Mu Xiaolu and slowly opened her mouth, her voice dry. Since you've seen him, do you know his name? I asked him, Mu Xiaolu replied. He said he's called layperson Yun Lin, but I heard them all call that person Master Lu. You should ask him. Mu Xiaolu pointed at Xiaoju. Layperson Yun Lin seems to be his master. I heard Cui Zhongqi ask. Mu Hongjin looked at Xiaoju. Is that so? Hien was so nervous that his palms were sweating. He heard Xiaoju reply yes. The banquet hall inexplicably became dull. Mu Hongjin didn't speak and just leaned on the couch. She didn't even notice Mu Xiaolu. Her gaze gradually drifted away, as if she was recalling a distant memory. There was no room for anyone else in her eyes. Hien thought to himself, from the looks of it, Mu Hongjin and Lu Buwang are not only old acquaintances, but also have a deep relationship. After a long time, Mu Hongjin came back to her senses and said indifferently, I know. She didn't say that she wanted to see him again, nor did she ask about Lu Buwang. It was as if this person was just a passerby who she had forgotten after hearing his name. Her expression returned to calmness, and for a moment, the gloominess also dissipated. She seemed to have returned to the aloof and unreasonable Royal Highness when they first met. It would be better if she kept asking, but she just let it go. Hien became suspicious, as if there was a restless cat constantly scratching his heart. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, Are your Highness and Layman Yunlin old acquaintances? Xiaoju glanced at him with a warning look. Hien didn't care. Lu Buwang was also her relative. Now that she could finally catch a glimpse of Lu Buwang's past, how could she give up? Besides Mu Hongjin's expression, at least she wasn't an enemy of Lu Buwang. Mu Hongjin didn't expect Hien to suddenly ask this. She looked at Hien, and Hien looked at her generously. After a while, Mu Hongjin smiled and said, Military Governor Xiao, your subordinate is really bold. Xiaoju's gaze was clear and indifferent. Your Highness, please forgive me. I haven't said anything yet. You don't have to be so anxious to defend her. Mu Hongjin smiled slightly. It's just that no one has dared to ask this question for many years. Yan found it strange. Was she really an enemy? If she was an enemy, why would Lu Buwang treat Mu Xiaolu so well? After all, Mu Xiaolu and Mu Hongjin were too similar. Facing a face that looked like an enemy, he wouldn't be gentle. Actually, it's no big deal to tell you, Mu Hongjin said lightly. Many years ago, before I got married, I once sneaked out of the prince's mansion. She glanced at Mu Xiaolu and said gently, just like Xiaolu yesterday. But I was very lucky. I didn't meet any bad people. Instead, I met a young man who just came down from the mountain. Her beautiful eyes stared at the painting on the wall in the distance. The painting was like a young girl sitting under a flower tree and weaving a garland. The large peach color was bright and beautiful, just like the spring day of that year. I admired this young man, so I pestered him and followed him with the excuse that I was penniless and had nowhere to go. It was also the first time Mu Xiaolu heard about her grandmother's past. She widened her eyes in surprise. It was the first time I fell in love with someone. Naturally, I was very sincere. However, that young man already had a sweetheart and didn't like me. He was also very cold to me. Father told me that the marriage was set, and they would get married in a few days. So I begged that young man to take me away. Yan was so surprised that he couldn't speak. Princess Mingji was really bold to elope before marriage. On the day of the appointment, he didn't come. Mu Hongjin said lightly. I was found by father's people and returned to Jiang to get married. After that, I never saw him again. Chapter 143. After Mu Hongjin finished speaking, her expression didn't change, as if she was talking about someone else's matter. Yan didn't feel good. She thought for a while and said, maybe. Householder Yunlin didn't come that day because he had something to do. I also made an appointment with someone, but I was delayed by something urgent, so I missed the appointment. There's nothing urgent. There's no misunderstanding. Mu Hongjin smiled and said. He told me this himself. Yan didn't say anything else, but he felt that what Mu Hongjin said wasn't the whole truth. If Lu Buwang really had someone else in his heart, ever since Yan met him, he had never seen any other woman. He had also never heard him mention anyone's name. Speaking of which, Mu Xiaolu was the one with the most different attitude, and Mu Xiaolu was Mu Hongjin's granddaughter. Young people always think that they're the unique one. Mu Hongjin smiled and said, I was the same when I was young. But I don't know that being unique or not depends on who sees it. In that person's eyes, I'm just the one who doesn't catch his eye among thousands of people. Your Highness, the person you're talking about is my master? Xiaoju asked. As Xiaolu said, I can't think of anyone else. Mu Hongjin said, it's just that I didn't expect him to come to Jiang. Yan thought to himself, Princess Mingji guessed wrong. According to the lady boss of the tea house, Lu Buwang not only came to Jiang this year, but also every year in the past. However, Lu Buwang didn't come to Jiang for Mu Hongjin, right? What's this? Is it better not to meet? Mu Xiaolu curled her lips and said, that person really has no taste. Grandmother is the most beautiful and powerful person in the world, but he's actually willing to let her down? Is he blind? I think he shouldn't be called Householder Yunlin, but householder who has no taste. You. Mu Hongjin poked Mu Xiaolu's head and scolded with a smile. You're so young, but you know what it means to let someone down? He won grandmother's favor, but not only is he not grateful, but he also doesn't take it seriously. If this isn't letting her down, then what is? Serves him right for not being able to marry grandmother. I don't want my grandfather to be such a person. Mu Xiaolu said angrily. She was a child and spoke without fear. It was probably because when she was born, Mu Hongjin's husband had already passed away. Since she had never met him, she didn't have any feelings for him. Thus, when she spoke of this matter, she didn't have any scruples. Sure. Mu Hongjin smiled and hugged Mu Xiaolu. Then our Xiaolu's future husband must cherish Xiaolu and never let her down. Of course, Yan didn't feel good when he saw the happy and harmonious appearance of the grandfather and grandson. There were thousands of different kinds of people in the world, and the number of people who were destined to be together was like the grains of sand in the Ganges River, innumerable. However, if you were misunderstood and couldn't say it out loud, that would probably be the most regrettable kind. Even the precious delicacies couldn't make her happy. After eating with a heavy heart, Xiaoju and Hien got up and said goodbye to Mu Hongjin. Mu Hongjin nodded. When she turned to leave, Hien finally couldn't help but look at Mu Hongjin and ask, "Your Highness, since you already know that your old friend is now living in the Chui mansion, why don't you ask about his current situation and his experiences over the years?" From the beginning until now, ever since she knew that Lu Buwang was the person who saved Mu Xiaolu, Mu Hongjin had played down the past and never mentioned this person again. As if Lu Buwang had nothing to do with her. Mu Hongjin was slightly startled, and then looked at Hien and said lightly, "That's all in the past. As for now, he and I have nothing to do with each other." After the meal, Hien and Xiaoju said goodbye to Mu Hongjin. After leaving the mansion, Hien couldn't help but look back at the vermilion gate of the mansion and said hesitantly, "Your Highness, do you really only treat my master as a stranger now?" Xiaoju said, "Love is deep and hate is deep. People who have really let go will not deliberately forget something." "What do you mean?" "I mean," he raised the corners of his mouth slightly, "Lady, he really doesn't know how to observe people's expressions when it comes to love." Was this a blow to her? Hien thought, besides, how could he blame her? In her previous life, she didn't have any occasion to carefully figure out other people's thoughts, except for the enemy generals. Besides, women's minds were delicate. If a woman really wanted to hide her feelings, she would definitely not let others see through her. "You speak as if you know very well," she retorted. "A little better than you." He walked forward leisurely, and Hien hurriedly followed. In the empty hall, the woman in the red robe and golden crown slowly walked up the steps and sat down on the high seat. After Mu Xiaolu finished her meal, she was taken back to her bedroom to rest by a maid. Mu Xiaolu had also received quite a shock yesterday. As a child, she was very tired and sleepy, so Mu Hongjin had someone send her some soup to calm her nerves. Fortunately, Mu Xiaolu was only frightened and not injured. Jiang was plagued by internal and external troubles. Yudo was among them, and the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in the city were in her hands. The current situation really couldn't be considered gratifying. This was originally a mess, but Mu Hongjin actually thought of another name in her heart. Lu Buwang. She really didn't expect that after so many years, she could still hear the name Lu Buwang from other people. She also didn't expect that Lu Buwang would dare to enter Jiang City again. If Mu Hongjin was young, she would definitely stand in front of him, look down at him condescendingly, and ask him to get out of her territory. But now, she didn't have such an impulse, and she didn't even want to see him. On the small table next to the high seat, there was a carved bronze mirror. Cui Yuezhi had found it for her from a merchant. The mirror was extremely thin, and the carvings were extremely beautiful. There was an emerald green opal inlaid on the wooden handle at the bottom. She had always liked complicated and gorgeous things, so she kept it with her every day. Mu Xiaolu always said that this bronze mirror looked old-fashioned, but Mu Hongjin didn't think so. She held the bronze mirror in her hand, and looked at the person in the mirror. The woman in the mirror was extremely beautiful. She didn't know when even her makeup had to be as dignified and exquisite. There was a touch of light red at the corners of her eyes, which made her beauty look cold and gorgeous. Her lips were also red and slightly pursed, which made her look restrained and cold. She reached out to stroke her hair. The maids all envied her for her long black hair. Even at this age, she didn't look old. But they didn't know that every morning, she would ask her personal maid to comb her hair carefully under the sunlight, find out the white in her hair, and pull them out one by one. As long as she was still the princess, she would always be young, beautiful, noble, and powerful. She would trample all the restless people under her feet, and accept everyone's respectful and sincere gazes. But she was old after all. Mu Hongjin looked at herself in the mirror. Once upon a time, her face was clean and she never put on makeup. Her eyes didn't have the domineering and fierce look now. That girl's eyes were always curved, and when she smiled, she revealed her white teeth. She was brash, hearty, and carefree. Her thoughts flew back to many years ago, so long that she couldn't remember which year it was. At that time, Mu Hongjin wasn't the red-robed and golden-crowned princess. She was the only daughter of King Mengji, the apple of his eye, a 17-year-old girl. The 17-year-old girl was full of imagination about love and the future. When she suddenly learned that her marriage was set, and she was going to marry the son of an important court official, her first reaction was fierce resistance. The old King Mengji, her father, looked at her with some guilt, but his tone was undeniably firm. You must marry him to stabilize your position as princess. I don't want to be a princess at all, Mu Hongjin snorted. I don't want to use my marriage to exchange for this position. I'd rather be an ordinary person. Her resistance wasn't taken seriously. Perhaps it was just a child's willful quarrel, or perhaps King Mengji knew very well that even if she resisted, there would be no result. The position of a vassal king was unstable. If he wasn't careful, no one would be able to escape. Mu Hongjin slipped out of the prince's residence late one night. She had a strange temperament, and had long yearned for the life of an ordinary person. She took a horsewhip, changed her appearance, and left Jiang City that night. The Mu Hongjin of that year was older than the current Mu Xiaolu, and also more intelligent and shrewd. She didn't suffer any losses along the way. She went all the way to the foot of Qiyun Mountain. Qiyun Mountain's mountain path was steep. Bystanders said that there was a barren mountain at the top. However, there was a lush peach forest at the foot of the mountain. It was spring, and the peach blossoms were bright and full of romance. Mu Hongjin was not far from the peach forest when she encountered a thief. Generally speaking, if a girl who was alone didn't disguise herself, it was very easy to encounter a thief with bad intentions. If the girl was a beautiful girl, it was even more difficult to avoid. There were many stories of heroes saving beauties in dramas, and they all originated from this. Mu Hongjin ran, and when she ran under a peach tree, she accidentally sprained her ankle and had nowhere to hide. The thieves grinned and came forward, like catching a turtle in a jar. If this was in a drama, at this time, the hero who saved the beauty would appear. The hero who saved the beauty did indeed appear. Stop. At this critical moment, someone's voice was heard. It was a clear male voice. Mu Hongjin looked back and saw a young man in white slowly walking over. His long hair was tied up in a bun with a white silk cloth, and he carried a zither on his back. He had delicate features and an otherworldly appearance, as if he didn't care about the secular world. He blocked in front of her. The thieves were stunned at first, but then they laughed. They thought that this young man looked weak and was just trying to stand out, so they quickly told him to get lost. Mu Hongjin also felt some despair. He looked more like a zither player than a hero. However, the young man just stood there calmly and didn't move. The thieves flew into a rage out of humiliation, and wanted to make the young man suffer a little. It wasn't until the young man pulled out the long sword at his waist that Mu Hongjin saw clearly that he actually had another sword. The young man in white was indeed a hero, and he was also a kind hero. His swordsmanship was extremely high, but he didn't take those people's lives. He just stopped and beat them until they fled. Only the two of them were left under the peach tree. In the crimson red, Mu Hongjin looked at the other party. The young man's eyes were calm and indifferent, and his robe was spotless. However, she knew that he was not a zither player, but a chivalrous hero. He jumped out of those thrilling dramas, and appeared in front of her like a divine soldier descending from the sky. He was the young chivalrous hero who saved her. The panic just now faded away, and she smiled with curved eyebrows and eyes. Thank you for saving me. My name is Mu Hongjin. What's your name? The young chivalrous hero seemed to be a little surprised by her sudden cheerfulness. He paused and said Lubuang. The girl from Jiang was cheerful and bold, enthusiastic and forthright. Mu Hongjin looked at him with a distressed expression, but a trace of craftiness flashed through her eyes. Young chivalrous hero Lu, I sprained my ankle and can't walk anymore. Since you've saved me, I'll help you to the end. Carry me on your back. The person in the bronze mirror smiled slightly, and her gaze gradually became distant. When she recalled the peach blossoms that year, she would unconsciously smile. She didn't hold the bronze mirror tightly, and accidentally dropped it on the ground. The sound alarmed the woman on the high seat. She bent down to pick up the bronze mirror, and was slightly startled. There was a crack on the smooth surface of the bronze mirror, because of the fall just now. It was very slight, and if one didn't look carefully, it wouldn't be discovered. The smile on her lips faded. After a while, she put the mirror aside. After all, it was difficult to repair a broken mirror. When they returned to the Chui residence, it was already evening, and Chui Yuezhi hadn't returned yet. He Yan was afraid that Lu Buwang would leave without saying goodbye, so the first thing she did was to look for Lu Buwang. When she found him, she found that Lu Buwang was playing chess with Lin Shuanghe. Both of them liked to wear white clothes. Lin Shuanghe looked like a fine young master in a chaotic world, while Lu Buwang looked like a noble and otherworldly swordsman. Seeing that He Yan had returned, Lin Shuanghe said, "Young master, madam, you're back. Mr. Lu's chess skills are too good. I, Lu Buwang, have such high chess skills, but I can't even last 10 moves against him. How many rounds has it been? Young master, why don't you play chess with Mr. Lu and help me win a round?" He Yan silently rolled her eyes in her heart. It wasn't that she was bragging about her master, but there was nothing that Lu Buwang wasn't good at. He was talented in both civil and martial arts. With Lin Shuanghe's mediocre skills, he could deceive girls in brothels, but compared with Lu Buwang, it was simply an insult to Lu Buwang. She walked to Lu Buwang's side and said to Lin Shuanghe, "Since you've lost so many rounds, Brother Lin should go back and practice well before the next round. I still have something to talk to my master about. Let's talk about it later." After saying that, she pulled Lu Buwang up and walked into the room. Lin Shuanghe looked at He Yan's back, leaned close to Xiao Ju, and asked curiously, "Why are you in such a hurry? What's wrong with my sister?" Xiao Ju said, "She went to listen to a story." "What story?" Lin Shuanghe was puzzled. "Did you see the princess in the mansion? How was it? Did she make things difficult for you?" Xiao Ju chuckled and didn't answer. She didn't make things difficult for him, but He Yan's gaze fell on the door that was closed by He Yan. It was just that this trip was probably an accident for Mu Hongjin, Lu Buwang, and even He Yan. Cui Jiao was about to go in with the tea, but was stopped by Xiao Ju. His gaze fell on the teapot on the tea tray, and he said, "Change a bowl of brown sugar water hot." Cui Jiao nodded. Xiao Ju turned around and saw Lin Shuanghe staring at him with a strange gaze. He frowned. "What are you looking at?" "Xiao Huaijin." Lin Shuanghe looked at him seriously, waved his fan and said, "You're finished." "You're sick," he replied indifferently. In the room, He Yan pressed Lu Buwang to sit down at the table, and he sat down as well. She had a lot of questions, such as Lu Buwang's previous words about tracking down the Wutua people, as well as Jiang's current actions. However, the first thing she said was, "Master, I just came back from the mansion and met Her Highness." Lu Buwang looked at her. He Yan hesitated for a moment before saying, "Princess Mengji seems to be an old acquaintance of Master." Lu Buwang said, "Yes." He admitted it so quickly? She was stunned for a moment. Since he was so frank, did it mean that there was nothing between them? He Yan realized for the first time that he was so talkative that he even wanted to know about other people's private affairs. But if it was about Lu Buwang, she couldn't help but want to know what kind of past her godlike, seemingly emotionless master had. Perhaps it was this past that made him seem more worldly, and more like an ordinary person. Princess Mengji said that she once admired Master, but Master has another love in his heart. He Yan simply said it in one breath. Back then, Princess Mengji wanted to escape from the marriage and made an appointment with Master, but Master didn't come, so she returned to Jiyang and got married. Hearing this, Lu Buwang was still expressionless, and no one could tell what he was thinking. He Yan said, "Master, is this true?" She always felt that with Lu Buwang's chivalrous character, who would bury the corpses when he passed by, if Mu Hongjin really begged him, he would definitely take her away. If he didn't intend to take her away from the beginning, he wouldn't have made an agreement with Mu Hongjin at all. Why did he have to do something unnecessary? "It's true," Lu Buwang replied lightly. He Yan was surprised. "Why? This is the best choice for her." Lu Buwang said, "As Princess Mengji, she should bear her due responsibilities, and Jiyang is her responsibility." But He Yan was still unwilling to give up. Is it because of this that Master didn't take her away, or is it because of other reasons? Does Master really have another love in his heart? For so many years, she had never seen Lu Buwang mention any woman or anyone he loved. To put it bluntly, if that lover was no longer alive, At least Zhong Yuan would pay respects to her every year during the Qingming festival. But no, there was nothing. Lu Buwang didn't answer her and just looked at He Yan with a smile. Is she doing well? Was she doing well? He Yan couldn't answer this question. The current situation in Jiang City was really not good. But from a certain point of view, Mu Hongjin was married and had a granddaughter. At least she wasn't as lonely as Lu Buwang. She could only say, Xiao Lu is her granddaughter. Lu Buwang smiled and didn't say anything. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became silent and stagnant. Outside, Cui Jiao knocked on the door and said, Madam, the sweet soup with brown sugar balls is here. Why do you still like sweet things? Lu Buwang came back to his senses and laughed. Go out and drink the sweet soup. I want to be alone for a while. He Yan hesitated for a moment, then stood up and said, Master, I'll go out first. She left the room, and the door was closed behind her. The night in Jiang was also warm, not as cold as the north. The wind blew in from the window, causing the shadows of the trees to sway slightly. It was like the fog on Qiyun Mountain. Lu Buwang had no parents. He was the youngest disciple of Taoist Yunji on Qiyun Mountain. Taoist Yunji was extremely outstanding. He lived far away and adopted a group of orphans as his disciples. Lu Buwang was ranked 7th, and was called Little Seven. The teenagers practiced martial arts on the mountain. When they were 18 years old, they had to go down the mountain to gain experience. When Lu Buwang went down the mountain, his senior brothers all came to see him off. He was proud and simple, and his nature was pure and honest. Everyone was afraid that he would be deceived at the foot of the mountain. Before he left, they gave him a lot of advice, which made him impatient. Every teenager felt that their future was bright, and that they could root out evil in the world, and take care of injustice everywhere. There was nothing that could humiliate their temperament or defeat their persistence. Lu Buwang was the same, who knew that as soon as he went down the mountain, he would see evil people bullying a weak woman in the peach blossom forest at the foot of the mountain. Lu Buwang stepped forward, drove away the evil people, and was about to leave, but the woman stuck to him like a dogskin plaster. He couldn't get rid of her. He still remembered the first time he saw Mu Hongjin. She was so beautiful and charming that one more look at her would make him blush. Her 2 braids hung in front of her chest. She blinked at him and said in an innocent voice, Young hero Lu, I sprained my ankle and can't walk. I'll help you to the end. Carry me on your back. He was shocked by her self-righteous words. He took a step back and said, No. Why not? Mu Hongjin said, Aren't you a young hero? Young heroes all have to do this. Young heroes all have to do this. Lu Buwang didn't understand when he was a teenager. He had been living on the mountain and didn't know the ways of the world, so he didn't know whether what she said was true or not. But looking at her confident look, Lu Buwang thought that maybe the people at the foot of the mountain were all like this. Was he making a fuss over nothing? As he thought about it, he saw Mu Hongjin cry out with a bitter face, Ouch, ouch, it hurts when I move. He was displeased that she was so delicate. Even Taoist Yunji's daughter, his junior sister, wasn't so delicate. He had no choice but to bend down and say, Come on up. Mu Hongjin climbed up happily. The girl's hands held his neck tightly. Her warm body was close to him, and he could smell the fragrance of her hair. Lu Buwang felt very uncomfortable. He wanted to refuse, but it was too late. He could only accept his fate and say, Miss, where do you live? I'll take you back. I don't have a home. The girl's voice was pitiful. I was kidnapped here. My home is far, far away. I'll follow you from now on. I'll go wherever you go. Lu Buwang was so shocked that he almost threw her off his back. What do you mean I'll go wherever you go? Why do you want to follow me? Since you saved me, of course you have to be responsible for me to the end. Mu Hongjin said confidently. Otherwise, you can take me back to my home. My home is in the Shuo capital, which is far away from here. Can you take me there? Lu Buwang. He really didn't expect that he would save such a big trouble when he saved someone. Were all the people at the foot of the mountain like this, and all the women at the foot of the mountain like this? No wonder eldest senior brother told him before he left. The women at the foot of the mountain are tigers. Even tigers were scared away by a firecracker. Why couldn't he get rid of this woman? As if reading his mind, The girl leaned close to his ear and said, "Don't be afraid. I don't eat much and I won't cost you much money. If you take me with you, I won't be a trouble. I beg you, young hero." Chapter 144. In the past 18 years of Lu Buwang's life, he had never interacted with a woman except for his little junior sister. Even his little junior sister was gentle and polite. He had never seen such a fierce weirdo. His senior brothers said that he was pure and honest, which was true. He put on airs, but he was repeatedly helpless against Mu Hongjin. He couldn't get rid of Mu Hongjin, so he thought that he would wait until he finished his business, and then take her to Chiyun Mountain. As for how to deal with her, he would let Taoist Yunji decide. Suddenly, there was a gentle and soft girl beside him, which made Lu Buwang very uncomfortable. But soon, this discomfort was diluted by anger. Mu Hongjin wasn't like what she said. "I don't eat much, and I won't spend much of your money. I won't be a problem if you take me with you." Mu Hongjin indeed didn't eat much, but she spent a lot of money. She was too picky. She had to choose the best restaurant to eat, dress beautifully, and live in an inn. Fortunately, she had her own money, which was very rich, so she could afford it. Not only that, but she also shared it with him generously. "Young hero, the roast duck of Wu Fanglu is really delicious. Try some." Lu Buwang frowned and looked at her. "Didn't you say that you were abducted? How can you have so much money on you? When the abductor abducted you, he must have been so kind that he didn't search you, right?" Mu Hongjin was stunned and said apologetically, "You found out. Well, in fact, I wasn't abducted here. She leaned close to Lu Buwang and whispered in his ear, "I ran away from my marriage." Lu Buwang looked at her in surprise. "It's true. I didn't lie to you. My father wants to marry me to an old man who is older than him. Look at me. I'm so young and beautiful. How can I marry into a tiger's den? I heard that the man is a pervert. He had married 3 wives before, but they were all tortured to death by him. I had no choice." She pretended to cry and covered her face with her sleeve. "I just didn't want to die so miserably." Lu Buwang was skeptical. "Nonsense. Since you have so much money on you, it can be seen that your family background is not bad. Why did your father marry you to such a person? That person's family background is even bigger than ours." Mu Hongjin said aggrievedly, "Don't you know that the higher the official's rank, the higher the official's rank? He took a fancy to me and wanted me to be his wife. My father had no choice. But I didn't want to. I escaped in the middle of the night. If they caught me, I would be dead. So, young hero, please don't leave me behind." Lu Buwang said angrily, "I'm not your husband." She made it sound as if he had abandoned her. They were strangers he had met by chance. If her family really found Mu Hongjin, and they wanted to take her away, what reason did he have to stop them? "That won't do." Mu Hongjin grabbed his hand. "You saved me, so you should be responsible for me. If you leave me behind halfway, I'll die sooner or later. It's better to die now. Come on." She snatched the long sword from Lu Buwang's waist and put it on the table. She looked at Lu Buwang and said aggressively, "It's better to die under your sword than to be tortured by that bastard. Young hero, kill me." There were people coming and going around. When some people saw them like this, they all pointed at them. Lu Buwang immediately blushed and said angrily, "What nonsense are you talking about? If you don't promise to protect me all the time, I'll always be like this." The young man was instantly overwhelmed. How could there be such an unreasonable woman in the world? However, she had said everything, and he couldn't even refute her. After a while, he was defeated. He gritted his teeth and said, "I promise you. Forget it. It would only take more than a month to gain experience at the foot of the mountain. After more than a month, he would take her back to Chiyun Mountain." Taoist Yunji had his own way. At that time, no matter how arrogant this woman was, they wouldn't meet again. Hearing this, Mu Hongjin immediately smiled. She suddenly approached him, looked at his face and said, "Actually, there is another way. As long as I get married now, that rotten old man won't be able to do anything to me. I see that you're handsome and your swordsmanship is outstanding. You're even better than that person. Why don't you marry me and we'll both be happy?" The girl smiled lightly, and her eyes were as moist as a mountain stream, clearly reflecting his figure. The young man in white was startled. He jumped up as if he had been bitten by a snake and reprimanded. Who wants to be happy with you? Oh. Mu Hongjin spread out her hands regretfully. That's a pity. That's a pity. Suddenly, there was a clang sound beside his hand, and he came back to his senses. He didn't know when his fingertips had accidentally touched the strings on the table, shattering his memories. He was stunned for a moment, and the clear and cunning voice of the girl back then seemed to appear in his mind. She kept calling him young hero, which made him impatient and upset. After a while, Lu Buwang lowered his head and smiled faintly. They were all gone and couldn't be chased. It was just adding to his sadness. He Yan also had something on his mind, because he met Mu Hongjin in the prince's mansion during the day. That night he didn't sleep well. He tossed and turned in bed and didn't fall asleep until the middle of the night. Fortunately, he didn't wake up Xiaoju. Because he slept late at night, he woke up a little later the next day. When he woke up, he didn't see Xiaoju. Hong Qiao smiled and said, "Young master went out early in the morning and told me not to wake madam up." He Yan said, "Oh," and asked Hong Qiao, "Did he say where he was going?" Hong Qiao shook her head. He Yan got up and washed up. After eating, he walked to the courtyard and saw Lu Buwang making tea. Lin Shuanghe was sitting on the side and admiring. "Master." He Yan went over and called. "Ehi." Lu Buwang smiled and said, "Do you want to drink tea?" "No." He Yan waved his hand repeatedly. Lu Buwang's skill in making tea looked quite intimidating, but the tea he made had always been very bitter, similar to medicine. Although she wasn't afraid of suffering, she wasn't someone who would ask for it. She immediately said, "I'm going out for a walk. You guys continue." He Yan smiled and walked away. When she arrived at Jiang, if it wasn't for something, her days would be very boring. If it was in the past, she would have practiced martial arts to strengthen her body on such a good morning in good weather. Unfortunately, she was wearing women's clothes now, so it wasn't convenient for her to do this. She was even more afraid of being exposed. After thinking about it, she could only give up. While she was regretting, Cui Jiao hurried over and said, "Madam, a guest is here." "If there's a guest, then so be it." He Yan was puzzled. What does it have to do with me? She wasn't the owner of the Cui mansion. She was obviously a guest. Even if there was a guest, it wasn't He Yan's turn to welcome her. No. Cui Jiao carefully looked at her face. "You know this guest. She's the daughter of Ling Diani from the Dibua Hall. She came to the mansion today and said that she came to have fun with you." He Yan was puzzled. Ling Xiao? Was she very close to Ling Xiao? They didn't even talk much. Their relationship wasn't close enough for them to visit each other, right? "Madam, do you want to go and take a look?" He Yan sighed. She had already come to the house. How could he close the door and not meet her? Forget it. He would just go and meet her for a while and see what she was up to. In the small garden, several young girls were sitting together. They were all dressed up and were beautiful. They were even more beautiful than the spring scenery in the garden. They were chattering and laughing, and their voices were like orioles. Just looking at them was really pleasing to the eye. Concubine Wei stood in the corridor and wrung her handkerchief angrily. She said, "These people are really too much. They're bullying our Yuyan." Second concubine Wei was putting nail polish on her fingers. The bright red color of the nail polish made her fingers look especially slender and white. "It can't be helped. Who told young Master Qiao to be so handsome? Our Jiang hasn't had such a person for many years. His age is just right. If I were 10 years younger, I would also give it a try. Try my ass." Concubine Wei was so anxious that she cursed. "Be careful or I'll tell Master." "Good sister, I was just saying. Why did you take it seriously?" Second concubine Wei laughed. She carefully looked at the nail polish on her fingers under the sunlight. "There are so many wolves chasing after a piece of meat. I'm too lazy to deal with them. Miss Yan is so pitiful." Third concubine Wei liked to be sad. She covered her heart with her handkerchief and sighed with a frown. She said with some empathy, "So many people have their eyes on her as soon as she arrived in Jiang. If she continues to stay in Jiang in the future, will her days be good? Although she is young and beautiful now, if other women were to appear in front of young Master Qiao every day, How long would young Master Qiao be able to last? A man's true feelings are too easily changed. They can't withstand a few words from a vixen. Who are you scolding? Second concubine Wei glanced at her. Do you dare to say that in front of Master? Third concubine Wei pretended not to hear her, and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. Fourth concubine Wei was the youngest, and used to be a street performer. She always laughed heartlessly and asked while eating melon seeds. That depends on whether young Master Qiao likes his wife or not. I quite like Miss Yan. She doesn't have the delicate air of a young miss. Last time, she even helped my servant carry the bucket. It was the first time I saw a master helping a servant. How nice. That's terrible. Third concubine Wei made a fuss over nothing. Men all like gentle and timid girls. Carrying a bucket. She didn't let others look down on her and think that she was born to be treated carelessly. Fourth concubine Wei was dissatisfied and spat out the melon seed in her mouth. What do you mean look down on me? I used to be a street performer and carried 5 water vats at a time. Master still liked me very much. What gentle and timid. Master didn't have the patience to deal with someone like you who would have a headache and fever every few days. Enough, stop arguing. Concubine Wei's head hurt from their argument, and she reprimanded them. We are talking about Miss Yuan now. In any case, she is quite miserable. Third concubine Wei muttered. You see, Miss Ling isn't easy to deal with. The other girls aren't that easy to deal with either. Young Master Qiao is born beautiful, but he treats people very coldly. I don't think he cares much about Miss Yuan. Sooner or later, something will happen. Third younger sister. Second concubine Wei glanced at third concubine Wei. Do you know why you are the least favored among the 4 of us? It's because you don't have good taste. Third concubine Wei glared at her angrily. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked like she was about to cry again. That young Master Qiao's temperament is indeed cold, and he doesn't seem to care much about Madame Qiao. I don't know why. Perhaps there were no feelings before marriage? However, from his behavior these past few days, it's clear that he likes Madame Qiao. Ordinary people's love isn't a big deal, but this kind of person's love is. There is a kind of person who is unmoved, but once he is moved, there is only one person in his eyes. Second concubine Wei raised her finger, and smiled like a vixen imparting her experience. No matter how many other girls are beautiful, they are all in vain in his eyes. Qiao Huanqing is this kind of person. When these words came out, everyone was silent for a moment. This kind of man was probably what women yearned for. For a moment, they were speechless. After a long while, concubine Wei opened her mouth and asked, Do you mean that we don't have to help? Help what? Second concubine Wei smiled carelessly. That Xiao Huanqing is very protective. Why don't we make a bet? I'm afraid that Wen Yuyan's husband will stand up for her before she is in trouble. When He Yan arrived at the small garden, a gust of fragrant wind hit him in the face, and he almost fainted from the smell. He didn't know why the women of Jiang liked to wear fragrant pouches so much. It was fine if it was just one person, but when many people crowded together, it was like a cloud of powder. For a moment He Yan missed Xiaoju's moonchilan fragrance very much. It was faint and light. It was just right. Madame Qiao is here. Ling Xiu stood up and smiled at her. He Yan didn't know any of these girls except for Ling Xiu and Yan Min. He thought for a moment and said, I heard that Miss Ling specially came to see me. You don't have to be so serious. Ling Xiu smiled and said, It's just that today's weather is good and we have nothing to do. We are sitting together and chatting. We thought that since Madame Qiao is here, we might as well go together. Madame Qiao won't find us disturbing, right? I won't. He Yan smiled and snorted in her heart. Even though she wasn't sensitive to women's affairs, she could tell that this group of people had ulterior motives. They weren't here to see her. They were clearly here to see Xiaoju. As expected, Ling Xiu's next sentence was, Why don't I see young Master Qiao? My husband went out early in the morning. He Yan smiled very amiably. He might not be back until late at night. What right did they have to see him whenever they wanted? He was the commander-in-chief of the right corps of Dawei. Of course, he couldn't just let anyone see him. If he didn't allow them to see him, then he didn't allow them to see him. When Ling Xiu and the girls behind her heard this, They instantly looked disappointed. He Yan smiled and said, "Didn't Miss Ling specially come to see me? Why, you're not joking, right?" "How can that be?" Ling Xiu regained her senses and affectionately pulled He Yan's hand and sat down at the stone table in the courtyard. "Quickly sit down. My father and official Chui have a very good relationship. In the past, I often came to the Chui residence to play. However, I never had a sister and it was rather lonely. It's good that Madame Qiao is here. In the future, when Ah Xiu comes to the Chui residence again, I don't have to worry about not having someone to talk to." He Yan thought to herself, "How is this looking for a sister? She's obviously here to see a handsome man. Xiao Ju should come and see what she meant by being more serious and deceiving than her." He Yan sat down in front of the stone table. To be honest, she didn't know these people at all, and didn't know what to say. She just casually picked up some fruits to eat, and planned to sit here as a decoration and listen to them talk. Unfortunately, since the other party was here for Xiao Ju, and Xiao Ju wasn't here, this madam couldn't possibly be spared. As they spoke, the topic of conversation landed on He Yan. "I heard that Madame Qiao is a famous talented woman in Hu province. Previously, I really wanted to hear Madame Qiao play the guqin. Unfortunately, I was stopped by Sir Qiao in the end. Now that I think about it, I feel regretful," Ling Xiu said with a smile. He Yan smiled and said, "What's there to feel regretful about? Didn't my husband also play a piece?" But Sir Qiao said that his guqin skills weren't even 1/10 of Madame's. Ling Xiu stared into He Yan's eyes. "It's really hard to imagine." Yes, it was really hard to imagine. He Yan thought to herself, Xiao Ju's lie was a little too exaggerated. Now that she heard it from someone else, she felt embarrassed. "My husband's praise is a little too much." He Yan poured herself a cup of tea and took a sip. "My guqin skills are about the same as his. If you listen to him, it's equivalent to listening to me." "How can that be?" Ling Xiu obviously didn't plan to let her off so easily. "In Jiang, we admire talented people the most. Since Madame has the talent to swallow the phoenix, you shouldn't hide it. The weather is good today. Why don't we pick up some poems here? Firstly, it's interesting. Secondly, we can see Madame's talent. Here it comes, here it comes." He Yan was annoyed. Why did Ling Xiu ask him to either play the guqin or compose poems? Did she have to play chess or write calligraphy if she said that she didn't know how to compose poems? He Yan thought to himself. Even if this lady is attracted by Xiao Ju's appearance and admires her, she should be targeting Xiao Ju. For example, she should be showing off her skills in front of Xiao Ju. Why is she making things difficult for me? Is it possible that Xiao Ju will like anyone who makes things difficult for me? Once was fine, but every time was the same. Ian didn't want to play this kind of game with them anymore. He only smiled and said, "Today, I don't want to compose a poem, nor do I want to play chess. Of course, I definitely won't play the zither." There was no room for negotiation at all. He directly rejected Ling Xiu. No matter how clever Ling Xiu was, she didn't expect He Yan to say that. After a while, Yin Min who had been silent all this time, snorted and mocked. "It's said that women in the Central Plains are graceful and polite. I think Madame Qiao's way of speaking is like our Miss Jiang. Very straightforward. When in Rome, do as the Romans do." He Yan smiled. "Madame Qiao, are you looking down on us?" Ling Xiu lowered her head and asked uneasily. "It's not that I'm looking down on you," He Yan said doubtfully. "It's just that I don't want to today. Didn't you say that Miss Ling is a talented lady? Why can't you understand a simple sentence? Is it difficult to understand what I said?" He Yan would have asked them to come out and fight if they were men looking for trouble today. However, it was not good for a woman to do such ungentlemanly things. After thinking about it, she decided that it would be better to use the title of evil Rakshasa to make these ladies understand that she was not to be trifled with. After being frightened, they would naturally not come to her door and ask her to play the guqin, chess, calligraphy, and painting again. Ling Xiu looked at her in a daze and did not say anything. When the other ladies saw this, they were dissatisfied with He Yan. It was probably because Ling Xiu was very prestigious among them. When Ling Xiu was wronged, all of them wanted to stand up for her. A lady with a slightly louder voice said, "Madame Qiao refuses to do this and refuses to do that. Could it be that she doesn't know how to play the guqin? The so-called title of a talented lady doesn't live up to its name. That's why she shirks it every time. How is that possible? Another lady seemed to be deliberately playing along with her. She said in surprise, "That young Master Qiao is not an ordinary person. He plays the guqin so well. It's obvious that he's an elegant person. He was already very wealthy in the past. Now that he's acknowledged his ancestors, he'll be a person of status in Jiang sooner or later. I heard that Madame Qiao is also from an ordinary family. If she doesn't have any special skills, what is young Master Qiao like about her?" Yin Min'er smiled insincerely and said, "Beauty. Speaking of which, Madame Qiao's skin is as white as jade. She's as beautiful as the moon." She emphasized the word skin as white as jade. Yin was speechless. She seemed to be talking about Xiao Ju. How could she be blamed for that? What kind of logic was that? Beautiful as the moon. There are so many beautiful ladies in Jiang. Isn't Ashio beautiful? She comes from a good family, has a gentle personality, and is brimming with talent. If that's the case, Ashio is the one who's compatible with young Master Qiao. Don't talk nonsense, Ling Xiu said with reddened eyes. Yin had finally experienced how bold Miss Ji Yang was, and how direct she was with her words. But what did they mean by this? Ling Xiu was a pure and innocent lady. Xiao Ju was now a married man. Did they want her to be Xiao Ju's concubine? Or did they want her to step down to make way for Ling Xiu? Was there something wrong with her brain? We didn't say anything wrong. Madam Qiao, you won't be liked by your husband sooner or later. The lady with the loudest voice laughed and said, Madam Qiao, please don't blame us for not being nice with our words. We're only saying this because we treat you as our own. Don't treat us as outsiders. Oh, since they couldn't do it openly, they were trying to sow discord? Yin had been with Xiao Ju for a long time, and had learned a thing or two about his ability to scold people without using any vulgarities. He immediately shook his head and smiled sweetly. Don't treat us as outsiders. Don't treat us as outsiders. I know that all of you have good intentions. However, you're worrying too much. My husband treats me very well. Even if I don't know how to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, he wouldn't blame me at all. Let alone if I didn't know how to play the zither. I have a bad temper, and I get angry and ignore people easily. My husband, on the other hand, would always be patient and coax me. He would cook noodles for me and take me to buy noodles. He would remember every word I said. He even remembers things like menstruation better than I do. Yin glanced at Ling Xiu and saw that Ling Xiu's expression was not good. He felt proud and spouted more nonsense. What's so difficult about learning the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting? When I'm unhappy, my husband will use his skills to make me happy. What you've seen is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many more that you haven't seen. Outside the courtyard, Xiao Ju had not reached the garden. She had just turned the corner when she heard He Yan's pretentious sigh. He used a disgusting and sickening tone to speak. Sigh, such an outstanding and unreasonable man only dotes on me. He can't tolerate anyone else in his eyes. What can I do? Chapter 145. Fei Nu, who was behind her, was speechless. Xiao Ju felt her eyebrows twitching. She had just returned to the Cui residence, and had not had time to change her clothes when she heard from Cui Jiao that Yin was dragged to the small garden by Ling Xiu. She knew what a woman like Ling Xiu was up to. However, Yin did not know anything about women. She thought about it, and decided to put out the fire first because she was afraid that Ling Xiu would be taken advantage of. Who knew that as soon as she arrived, she would see Ling Xiu so proud of herself and did not seem to be taken advantage of. The other women were so angry that their faces turned green. She wasn't too stupid. Xiao Ju was both angry and amused, so she didn't go forward. She simply stood at the corner of the garden, and looked at her coldly. She wanted to hear what other shocking crazy things this person could say. On the other side, Second Yinyang showed a knowing smile. She pointed at the figure at the corner of the garden and said, Look, someone is here to protect her. It's true. Fourth Yinyang clenched her fists and said, Second sister, you are so good at judging people. I admire you. It's hard to say who he will help. Third Yinyang was not satisfied with her wrong judgment and said, What if Qiao Gongzi sees Ling Xiu's beauty and changes sides? Yinyang Wei frowned and said, If you don't know how to speak, then don't speak. Second Yin laughed in schadenfreude. On the other side, Hien was still speaking with assurance. That's why I said to my sisters, you must learn the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy and painting. However, you must learn them to make yourself happy. If you only want to make a man like you, then you should learn how to control your husband. Before I was married, I was also very fond of romance. However, after I got married, I felt that everything was just fleeting clouds in the valley. Only the trick of controlling a husband is truly powerful. Really? This group of girls was not too old. Although they were a little annoying at times, they were not so scheming. Since they could write their thoughts on their faces, they were naturally not scheming. One of the girls asked, then tell us, what is your secret to controlling your husband? Hien coughed and said seriously, I am ashamed to say that I do not know what my technique of controlling my husband is. Back then, I only met my husband once at the Lantern Festival. I didn't even know him. The next day, he came to propose marriage and said that he would marry no one but me. Actually, I didn't want to get married so early, but he was so infatuated that he told me he wouldn't marry anyone but me. If I didn't agree to marry him, he would commit suicide by jumping into the river. I thought that since it was a human life, I might as well do a good deed. Moreover, you also know a saying, a strong woman is afraid of a pestering man. He kept pestering me, so I married him. I've thought about it. There's only one trick to controlling a husband. First of all, you have to have a face that can make people infatuated at first sight and want to marry no one else but you. She combed her long hair that hung in front of her chest and said somewhat embarrassedly, of course, this is not something that everyone can do. Secondly, you must like him less than he likes you. Men and women were generally evenly matched. In small matters, there would always be someone who had the upper hand and someone who was at a disadvantage. This is just like fighting a war. It's not a good thing to always place too much importance on your lover. If you treat yourself well, there will naturally be someone who will love you. Hien made up such nonsense that she almost believed herself. I've never fawned on my husband, but he doted on me like a pearl or a treasure. This is the result. Thirdly, Hien said in her heart, I can't make up the third one. She smiled slightly. Good people are rare. Everyone has to open their eyes and look carefully. Rather than staring at someone else's, it's better to open your eyes and raise a new one. Fei Nu secretly glanced at her master. Second young master Xiao was leaning against the wall. His smile was slightly cold, and his eyes were filled with ridicule. Fei Nu thought. This lady, he said something about a strong woman being afraid of a pestering man. Their young master is a pestering man? And he kept pestering her? He really knew how to flatter himself. Second Yin stopped cracking melon seeds and stared at Hien. She said in surprise. So it was me who made a mistake? I thought he was someone who didn't know about the inner courtyard. I didn't expect him to be an expert. Wonderful. Although I don't quite understand what she said, Fourth Yin scratched her head. It sounds very impressive. Hien's heart calmed down a little. He felt that since he was reborn, he had seen a lot of the world with Xiao Ju. He had even learned a lot about talking to people and talking to ghosts. Of course, this nonsense right now was enough to scare these little girls into a daze. However, in a group of people, there were always one or two who were not easy to fool. Yen Min looked at her and said sarcastically, do you really think that people will believe what you said? Young Master Qiao dotes on someone? And pesters you? Does young Master Qiao look like this kind of person? When she said this, the few young ladies who were still in a daze recalled Qiao Huanqing's cold appearance and immediately became clear-headed. No matter how they looked at it, Qiao Huanqing didn't look like the kind of person who would pester Wen Yiyan. You must be lying, the loud-voiced young lady said. I'm not. Yiyan was very sincere. Our relationship as husband and wife is very good. So good that it's beyond your imagination. Just a few days ago, during the Water God Festival, we even walked on Lover's Bridge. I'm afraid of heights and didn't want to go at first. However, when my husband heard that people who cross the bridge together will not be separated for the rest of their lives, he forcefully carried me over. If I hadn't sternly refused, he might have had to walk on it 3 times, destined for 3 lifetimes. Xiaoju. He couldn't bear to continue listening. He only felt that it was inconceivable. How could there be such a person in the world, who could tell such a lie without blushing or panting? She was so serious that it made one's hair stand on end. What's wrong with that? The young lady at the side was unconvinced. So many people walk on Lover's Bridge. We even look at pictures together, He Yan said. Ling Xiu didn't understand. What pictures? Spring. Before she finished speaking, a light cough was heard. Everyone turned to look, and saw a young man slowly walking over. He was so elegant that he could be in a painting and was as handsome as jade. It wasn't the first time they had seen him, but every time they saw him, they couldn't help but be mesmerized by this person's appearance and praise him in their hearts. When he passed by He Yan, his beautiful eyes fell on He Yan, revealing a hint of warning. He Yan also forgot what he was talking about. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Xiao Ju say faintly, "Yan Yan, what are you doing here?" Yan Yan. Ling Xiu was stunned. It wasn't uncommon for couples to call each other Xiao, but it was always done in private, in front of everyone, unless their love was so strong that they didn't have any taboos. He Yan's breath was stuck in his chest and he didn't know what to say. Although he knew that Xiao Ju was calling Wen Yuyan's Yan Yan, it was such a coincidence that she also had a Yan. Thinking about it this way, he seemed to be calling her Yan Yan. She replied blankly, "Just drinking tea and chatting." Xiao Ju nodded and stared at her with a pair of sparkling black eyes. He smiled slightly and said in a gentle voice that made her heart tremble, "Can you accompany me back to the room to sit?" Sit for what? He Yan was extremely unaccustomed to him speaking like this. She only felt that the surrounding gazes were like knives, so flying towards her. It was really depressing. Just now, she was here bragging about how favored she was, but in return she only got a liar. Moreover, Xiao Ju didn't say much. He only put a gentle gaze on her, and she received so many jealous gazes. Who wouldn't say that second young master Xiao was amazing? "Play the zither with me." The young man's face was as beautiful as jade and his eyes were as bright as the stars. His hair was soft and cold, and it hung on his shoulders. He reached out and gently rubbed He Yan's hair. He really doted on her. The people around them wanted to push He Yan away and stuff their heads under the young man's hand. "Oh, okay." He Yan composed herself and stood up. When she looked up again, she also had a shy expression. "Sisters, I'm sorry. My husband wants me to go back and play the zither with him." She sighed again and said with annoyance, "It's true that a fierce woman is afraid of a pestering man." He Yan turned around and leisurely walked away with Xiao Ju. The people behind them looked at each other. After a while, Ling Xiu flung her handkerchief, gritted her teeth and wiped her face. Yan Min'er was startled. "What's wrong?" Ling Xiu was so angry that she cried. The plate of melon seeds was empty. Fourth concubine clapped her hands and said with dissatisfaction, "That's it. If you want to watch, go find a book." Concubine Wei rebuked. "Do you think young Master Qiao is here for you to watch a show? Don't say, this is much better than the show in the lovesickness class." Second concubine rested her chin on one hand. Watching from afar, when young Master Qiao protected his wife, it was quite moving. Watching it made me want to. "What are you thinking?" Concubine Wei said. "Don't cause trouble for me." "Good sister, I'm just saying." Second concubine smiled flirtatiously. "At our age, even if we want to spend time with someone under the moonlight, there's no one to support us." Third concubine did not say any sour words, only muttering, "Madame Qiao's luck is quite good to find such a husband. With this brain of yours, why do you only think that young Master Qiao is not bad?" Fourth concubine rolled her eyes. "I think that Madame Qiao is also an interesting person. If you were surrounded like that just now, you would have cried and jumped into the river. Look at her. What is called 4 tails of force against 1,000 caddies. The art of controlling a husband is not simple. You should learn more, third sister." At this moment, He Yan, who had the enviable art of controlling a husband, was on the way back to the courtyard with Xiao Ju. On the way back, He Yan did not dare to breathe loudly, nor did he raise his head to look at Xiao Ju. He did not say a single word. Without a doubt, since this person had appeared at that time, it was obvious that this person had not just arrived. It was possible that this person had been standing behind for a long time. The words that she had said to smear Xiao Ju's reputation had most likely been heard by Xiao Ju. It was all the fault of that group of girls who were too talkative. They were so noisy that she did not hear Xiao Ju's footsteps. She did not know what Xiao Ju was thinking right now, but she knew that he must be very angry. What should she do to appease his anger when she returned? Apologizing before he gets angry? Just as she was thinking, the courtyard was already in front of her. On the way back, He Yan and Xiao Ju saw Lin Shuanghe standing in the courtyard, talking to a servant girl. Lin Shuanghe, this lecher, said something to his new servant girl, which made her blush and laugh. When he raised his eyes, he saw that He Yan and Xiao Ju had returned. Lin Shuanghe greeted them. Young master, young mistress is back? Where did you go? He Yan replied awkwardly. I drank some tea. Let's talk about it later. She followed Xiao Ju back to the room. As soon as she entered the room, she bumped into Xiao Ju and almost fell into his arms. Xiao Ju looked at her indifferently, reached over her body, and closed the door behind her. He Yan, sit. He turned around and sat down at the table. His calm tone made He Yan feel that he was denouncing him. He Yan quickly sat down in front of him. Why aren't you saying anything? Xiao Ju raised his eyebrows and looked at her with a faint smile. Weren't you very talkative just now, fierce girl? He Yan was shocked. So he heard it. She said, Commander-in-Chief, you know that they come to find trouble with me every few days. I can't stand it, so it's just a temporary solution. Can I ask, when did you arrive, and how much did you hear of what I said? Xiao Ju sneered. What's the difference? The difference is in the content of my apology. Xiao Ju stared at her for a while, then said, Lady He, do you not care about your own reputation, or do you not care about my reputation? I'm sorry, He Yan apologized sincerely, but I think, now that we are young Master Qiao and Miss One, it should be fine to make our relationship more intimate. After all, it's normal for husband and wife to be intimate. Xiao Ju couldn't take it anymore. Are you talking about intimacy? Isn't it? If I didn't come over just now, what were you going to say? What did you and I look at? He was well educated and couldn't bring himself to say those two words. However, He Yan was obviously not as particular as him. He said straightforwardly, You're talking about the spring map. Xiao Ju pinched her forehead. You don't have to say it so loudly. He Yan lowered his voice and asked doubtfully. We looked at the spring map together, which means that we have a very good relationship. What's wrong with that? Back in the days when they were in the barracks, the men had expressed their friendship with their lives. Most likely, they had shared their treasured treasure maps with their brothers. If they didn't have a good relationship, they wouldn't lend it to them even if they begged. It was even more so between husband and wife. When two people looked at the spring map together, it was like they were glued to each other. Xiao Ju's face darkened. He asked slowly, Who told you that looking at the spring map together means that we have a good relationship? What kind of person was this? He Sui taught his daughter how to say such things. She didn't even know what to say and what not to say. Did she know that if he didn't appear today and stop her from saying what she was going to say next, what she said would be enough to shock everyone in Jiang City? He Yan suddenly stopped talking. That's what I think. Also, after you looked at the spring map, you said that we had a good relationship. There wasn't any estrangement because of it, right? When did I look at it? Xiao Ju's face turned pale. You looked at it at that time, He Yan insisted. It's still a look. We've already looked at it together. He was slightly annoyed. I didn't look at it. You did. I didn't. Forget it, He Yan said. If you say you didn't, then don't. Xiao Ju felt a headache coming on. She was the one who was talking nonsense. Why did it seem like she was the one who was being unreasonable? You're talking nonsense. It's fine if you don't take our reputation seriously, but you'll also ruin Xiao Huanqing and Wen Yuyan's reputations. He sneered slightly. He Yan thought for a moment and said, I understand. I won't tell anyone that we looked at the spring map together. I didn't look at it with you, Xiao Ju emphasized again. Then can I look at it myself? He Yan was puzzled. Why was Xiao Ju still brooding over this matter? You're not allowed to look at it yourself. He raised his eyebrows and warned coldly. Do you know what you said just now? You're a fierce woman. Ian coughed and choked on his own words. She pleaded softly, "Commander-in-Chief, don't call me a fierce woman. It sounds like you're scolding me." "Oh," Xiaoju said with a faint smile. "But I saw that you were quite happy when you said that I would marry no one else but you. If I couldn't marry you, I would jump into the river. Lady, he isn't tall, but I didn't expect you to have so many tricks up your sleeve. Isn't that to prove that your heart is as firm as a rock?" Ian said helplessly. "I just wanted them to give up. Otherwise, they would come to find trouble with me every few days. Who could stand that? You can use your beauty to commit crimes. The unlucky one is me. Commander-in-Chief, you have to have some sympathy." "I don't have any sympathy." Xiaoju was so angry that she laughed. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to help her out and teach Ling Xiao and the others not to do useless things, he wouldn't have had to do so in front of others. Even now he still felt uncomfortable. "Why should I have sympathy?" he said indifferently. "Don't you have the ability to control your husband? You only need to hook your finger to make your husband dote on you. It sounds like your husband is more pitiful." Ian didn't know what to say. "You have a face that makes people want to marry only you." Xiaoju's lips curled into a playful smile. She stared into her eyes and said slowly, "He loves you like a jewel and a treasure, but you don't love him as much as he loves you. You pester him, but he doesn't change his infatuation and insists on being with you for 3 lifetimes. Fierce woman, aren't you a little too heartless?" Ian had goosebumps when he heard her call him a fierce woman. She quickly moved the stool closer to Xiaoju and grabbed his arm. She said righteously, "That's right. Our commander-in-chief is such a beautiful person. How can she be the one who pesters him? Other than you, no one else has the right to be called a fierce woman. If you want to be with someone for 3 lifetimes, don't even mention crossing a bridge. You can even cross a mountain of swords. No one can be heartless to you, no one." "That's not what you said just now," he said slowly. "What I said just now was a lie. I'm speaking the truth now," Ian said. "You have to believe me." The girl's eyes were clear and firm, just like the wild cat he met in the courtyard. When its tail was stepped on, its fur would explode, but when it jumped up to be patted, it would be exceptionally obedient. A hint of a smile flashed across his eyes, but it disappeared in a flash. He said lightly, "In the future, don't read such nonsense." He paused and said, "Let's forget about this matter." Ian was greatly relieved. This person was really not easy to fool. All he did was make him sound a little less cold, and he got so angry. It seemed that second young master Xiao really cared about his image in other people's eyes. Ian thought about it and said, "Commander-in-Chief, don't just look at these things. Before this, I also said a lot of good things about you. For example, I said that you are proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, and that you are omnipotent. Next time, you must perform well in front of them to prove that what I said is true." Xiaoju sneered, "Am I a street performer?" "That's not true." Ian scratched his head. He thought for a while and said to Xiaoju, "But next time, if something like this happens again, and there are still people who don't know how to read the situation and come looking for trouble, Commander-in-Chief, you must cooperate with me and show that we are a loving couple. Maybe this way, they will know how difficult it is and retreat, and stop looking for trouble." Xiaoju raised her eyebrows. "Cooperate?" Ian nodded. He glanced at Ian. "If you beg me, I can consider it." Ian said, "Please, Commander-in-Chief." "Xiaoju." She actually said it out loud so easily. He frowned slightly, and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "You are so spineless and you call yourself a fierce woman. I told you not to call me a fierce woman." Ian was angry. "Commander-in-Chief, you are really childish." "Oh." He raised his eyebrows and said word by word, "Fierce woman. Childish." However, after the incident in the garden, it was unknown whether Yan's words had an effect, or whether Xiaoju's indifferent performance of doting on his beloved wife had an impact. For 2 days in a row, the entire Chui residence was very quiet. There were no more young ladies from Jiang City who wanted to drink tea and chat with Madame Qiao. Hong Qiao took out the teardrop gauze from the box and said, "Today Madame will enter the prince's residence, wear this." Ian nodded. "Okay." Princess Mengji held a banquet in the prince's residence today, and He Yan and Xiaoju attended. She said that there would be guests, but they didn't know who they were. Cui Yuezhi was still a little confused. Why did Her Highness invite the two of you, but not me? He Yan knew that in Mu Hongjin's heart, her and Xiaoju's identities had already been exposed. If Cui Yuezhi was also present, it would be inconvenient for them to talk. But there was an important guest, and she and Xiaoju were invited to accompany them. Why? Did they know the other party? But they couldn't figure it out. They would know when they arrived at the prince's residence. After Hong Qiao dressed He Yan went out. Xiaoju was already waiting outside, talking to Lu Buwang. These days, Lu Buwang wasn't around during the day and only came back at night. When he came back, it was too late. He Yan had already fallen asleep, so he didn't have time to talk to Lu Buwang. Now that she saw Lu Buwang, she had to go out again. Master, she said. In fact, there were several times when He Yan wanted to ask Lu Buwang if he wanted to see Mu Hongjin. But after all, it was someone else's business, and he couldn't interfere too much. Besides, only he knew what had happened between the two of them. Lu Buwang smiled and nodded at her. Be careful. He Yan nodded. Now that there might be Yudo in Jiang City, there might be people who had seen Xiaoju. It was never a bad thing to be careful. Fei Nu and Qi Wu followed them as coachmen. Lin Shuanghe stayed in the Cui residence, so he didn't have to go with them. He Yan and Xiaoju got on the carriage. He Yan asked, Commander, today Princess Mingji specially asked you and me to go to the prince's residence for the banquet, but she didn't ask Cui Zhongqi. That means she was worried about our identities. But there are important guests coming. Could it be that the important guests know our identities? Who are they? Xiaoju lowered her eyes. The emotions in her eyes were unclear, and her voice was extremely flat. People from Shuajing. Chapter 146. He Yan and Xiaoju got off the carriage when they arrived at Prince Mingji's mansion. A servant led the way. This was not their first time visiting the Prince Mingji's mansion, so they felt much more at ease. The servant led He Yan and Xiaoju to the entrance of the banquet hall and said respectfully, His Highness and the guests are inside. Young Master Qiao and Madam can go in directly. He Yan and Xiaoju entered the banquet hall. Mu Hongjin was leaning on a soft couch. Her red robe spread across her face. She had a faint smile on her lips, and was listening to the zither player playing the zither. There was another person sitting at a short and long table with his back facing He Yan. He was wearing a bamboo-colored robe, and had a jade hairpin on his head. His back view looked somewhat familiar. She was still trying to figure out who this person was when Mu Hongjin's gaze swept past them and she smiled. Military Governor Xiao is here. He Yan and Xiaoju bowed to Mu Hongjin. At the same time, the man who was sitting with his back facing them also stood up, and turned his head to look at them. The space between his brows was as gentle and elegant as an orchid, as clear as a banished immortal. He Yan never thought that he would actually see Chu Zhao and Meng Ji Wangfu in Jiyang. The shock only lasted for a moment. He Yan immediately knew that things weren't good. She was now disguised as a woman. She didn't know what Chu Zhao would think if he saw her. This person's identity was still unknown. If he went back and told Su Jingfu would use this matter to create trouble for Xiaoju. That wouldn't be good. She stopped in her tracks and subconsciously took a step back toward Xiaoju, trying to block Chu Zhao's gaze. However, she knew that unless she turned around and left immediately, her identity would be discovered by Chu Zhao sooner or later. Xiaoju seemed to sense something. She turned her head slightly and glanced at her. She sneered. What are you afraid of? He Yan was about to speak when Chu Zhao saluted the Xiaoju and said with a smile, Military Governor Xiao, miss he. Well, He Yan must have seen it. He didn't even need to cover his face. He didn't even need to look in the mirror. He knew that his face must be very ugly at this moment. Xiaoju said, Fourth young Master Chu. It seems like you two are old acquaintances, Mu Hongjin smiled. Sit, fourth young Master Chu is a distinguished guest from the Shura capital. Xiaoju and He Yan sat down at the short table next to them. The maidservant beside her came over to pour tea. Mu Hongjin waved her hand, signaling the musician who was still playing the guqin to leave. The banquet hall quieted down. He Yan lowered his head and looked at the tea leaves floating up and down in his teacup. Illness comes from the mouth and disaster comes from the mouth. Dieting brings no disease, but choosing words leads to no disaster. At this time it was best to speak less. Xiaoju looked at Chu Zhao and said, "Fourth young master Chu, what brings you to Jiang?" She went straight to the point and didn't say anything else. Chu Zhao lowered his head and smiled before answering. "I came to Jiang this time because of the Yudo." Yudo? He Yan pricked up his ears to listen. He heard Chu Zhao say, "There are Yudo in Jiang now. I'm afraid that there will be chaos in the near future. I came this time to help your highness and prevent more people in Jiang from suffering from this disaster." He looked at Princess Mingji. Xiaoju smiled slightly. "Fourth young master Chu, how did you find out that there are Yudo in Jiang?" "We caught a Yudo in the Shuo capital who was plotting to start a war. We followed the clues and found out that the person who met him is now in Jiang. Father and I found out from the other party's secret message that the Yudo is planning to start a war in Jiang. Once the canal is cut off, it will cause trouble for the entire Dawei. Father ordered me to immediately rush to Jiang and inform your highness of this matter to prepare for a rainy day." Xiaoju raised her eyebrows and said in a mocking tone, "As far as I know, Shi Jinbo no longer cares about the matters in the residence. I'm afraid that he can't order fourth young master Chu around." Lin Shuanghe had also said this to He Yan. Shi Jinbo had been fooling around every day and didn't care about the matters in the residence. Shi Jinbo's wife was in charge of the matters in the residence. As for the rest, ever since Chu Zhao had Su Jingfu's support, Shi Jinbo had already become Chu Zhao's residence. "It's just a rumor spread by outsiders," Chu Zhao replied in a good-natured manner. "I don't dare to disobey father's words." Mu Hongjin seemed to have discovered something from the exchange between the two of them. She wasn't in a hurry to speak. Instead, she drank her tea lazily and quietly observed. "If you want to inform her highness, a secret letter will do." Xiaoju sneered. "Fourth young master Chu, why do you have to personally make a trip?" "Because there's something more important that needs to be personally handed to her highness." Mu Hongjin chuckled. "Fourth young master Chu, you brought the Yudo's military defense map." Xiaoju and He Yan looked up at Mu Hongjin at the same time. With the other party's military defense map, the war was already half won. But how did Chu Zhao get such an important thing? He Yan couldn't help but ask. "Fourth young master Chu, where did you get this map? How can you be sure that the drawing on this map is real or fake?" "How I got it depends on luck." Chu Zhao smiled gently. "As for whether it's real or fake, I can't be sure. So, I can only give it to her highness." He paused and looked at Xiaoju. "But I'm relieved to see Military Governor Xiao. With Military Governor Xiao around, regardless of whether the military defense map is real or fake, Jiang City will definitely be saved. After all, Dawei is a genius general, and only Military Governor Xiao has a meritorious service." He Yan's heart skipped a beat when he heard this, and he couldn't help but look at Xiaoju. The water attack in the Battle of Guo City's Long Valley was a hurdle that Xiaoju couldn't overcome. Chu Xilan's words were like stabbing a knife into his wound. Xiaoju's expression was calm. She curled her lips and looked back at Chu Zhao. "Fourth young master Chu, aren't you making a mountain out of a molehill by coming all the way to Jiang with a military defense map that we don't know if it's real or fake? Or..." She paused, and there was a meaningful look in her eyes. "Do you have other important matters to attend to? How can you say that I'm making a mountain out of a molehill?" Chu Zhao shook his head. "If I stay in Jiang, I can advance and retreat together with all of you. If Yudo really has ulterior motives, Military Governor Xiao and I will fight against the enemy. If the news is fake, it will be a false alarm, and everyone will be happy." "Fight against the enemy together?" Xiaoju said lazily. "Fourth young master Chu, if you can't even save yourself, no one will be in time to save you." Chu Zhao smiled but didn't say anything. Second young master Zhao's skill at mocking others was unparalleled. Moreover, Chu Xilan was indeed weak. If something really happened, he would be a burden. Military Governor Xiao. Mu Hongjin was almost done watching the show. She had a rough idea of the relationship between these two people. She looked at Xiaoju. "I will give you a copy of the military defense map that fourth young master Chu brought. The total number of soldiers inside and outside Jiang is about 20,000. and they will be under your command. According to the secret letter that fourth young Master Chu brought back, Yudo will definitely rebel within 10 days. Within these 10 days she paused for a moment, must ensure that the people of Jiang are safe. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. Your Highness, you have considered everything. Mu Hongjin glanced at the smiling Chu Zhao. Fourth young Master Chu came from afar, and both of you are old friends. Fourth young Master Chu will also be staying in the Chui residence for the next few days. If you have any important matters to discuss, it will be convenient for you to discuss them. Chu Zhao returned the greeting. Your Highness is very considerate. Yan. Mu Hongjin was really good. The moment she arrived, she arranged for these two sworn enemies to be together. Not to mention that they had important matters to discuss. Yan pondered. Just based on the fact that these two people could talk like swords, it would not be easy for them to pass these 10 days peacefully. After exchanging some pleasantries, Mu Hongjin got up and asked someone to send He Yan and the others back to the Chui residence. When there was no one else in the banquet hall, the older maid beside her asked, Your Highness, why did you let fourth young Master Chu stay in the lieutenant commander's residence? Military Governor Xiao doesn't seem to like fourth young Master Chu. These two people don't get along, Mu Hongjin said faintly. If they don't get along, they can keep each other in check. Xiao Huaijin is a godly commander, but Jiang City can't be controlled by him alone. After all, no one knows if what he said is true or false. When these two people speak, half of it is true and half of it is false. If you compare them, you can always find some clues. Moreover, she sighed, stood up, and looked at the sky outside the hall. There's not much time left. If the Yudo really wanted to move against Jiang, from tomorrow onwards, she would have to arrange for the people of Jiang to evacuate from the city. Her lord father had handed Jiang City over to her. For so many years, she had been protecting Jiang very well. Now that things had come to this, she could not fail. There was also Mu Xiaolu. She turned around, the corners of her eyes red and deep. She said coldly, Go and call Xiaolu here. He Yan and Xiao Ju left the prince's residence together. Chu Zhao stood beside them. When the three of them left the residence, they did not say anything. He Yan was secretly thinking about how to make this lie flawlessly. He might as well insist that he was originally a man. This time, he disguised himself as a woman and went to Xiao Ju to Jiang because he had no other choice. As for why he acted so well, he would say that he was a man and a woman. Qiwu had been following them for so long. Didn't he not discover anything? When he thought of this, his heart relaxed slightly. Miss He. As he was thinking, someone beside him called his name. Yan turned around. Chu Zhao stopped and looked at him with a smile. Xiao Ju also stood still and did not go far. He Yan felt a little comforted with his superior by his side. He looked at Chu Zhao and smiled. Fourth young master, you don't have to call me that. Actually, I didn't expect to see Miss He dressed as a woman again after seeing Miss He in red. The young man smiled very gently. Even his praise was sincere. It sounded more sincere than the workers of the embroidery workshop and Lin Shuanghe who blindly boasted with their eyes closed. This dress suits you very well. It suits Miss He very well. He Yan's prepared speech came to an abrupt end. What did he mean by saw her last time? Ever since she entered the military camp, this was the first time she dressed as a woman. Where did Chu Zhao see her dressed as a woman? He Yan subconsciously looked at Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows slightly as if she was waiting for him to speak. Wait a minute. Could it be that Xiao Ju thought that she and Chu Zhao were already in cahoots? You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. He Yan said. Brother Chu, I don't quite understand what you mean. When did I appear in red in front of you? Chu Zhao smiled faintly. At the racecourse in Shuajing. Miss He personally went to the racecourse to protect her father and younger brother. She was valiant and formidable. It was unforgettable. At that time, the wind blew your white veil. He lowered his head and smiled. I accidentally saw your face. At that time, I already knew that you were a woman. The racecourse in Shuajing? What kind of old story is this? How can Chu Zhao still remember it? Does this mean that Chu Zhao already knew that I'm a woman? He Yan was shocked. So Brother Chu already recognized me when we were in Liangzhou? At that time, I saw that Miss He didn't seem to want her identity to be exposed. Moreover, there were many people in the Imperial Guard station, so I didn't reveal it. Chu Zhao said. However, since we've met here today, there's no need to hide it anymore. Chu Zhao looked at He Yan and said gently, I'm not saying this for anything else. I just hope that Miss He won't worry. I didn't reveal your identity when we were in Liangzhou. Now that we're in Jiang, I won't tell anyone either. After the incident in Jiang, Chu Zhao will pretend that he never met Miss He. Miss He can still return to Liangzhou to make contributions. You don't have to worry about me spreading rumors. He probably noticed He Yan's misgivings when they were in the banquet hall earlier, so he purposely said these words to reassure He Yan. No matter what Chu Zhao's identity was, or what relationship he had with Su Jingfu, just from the way he spoke, he was really very considerate and thoughtful. It was very difficult for people to have a bad impression of him. He Yan smiled and said, Then I will thank Brother Chu first. There's no need to thank me between us, Chu Zhao said with a smile. I don't want Miss He to be worried because of my appearance. As for the matter of snitching, Chu Zhao isn't that kind of person. Xiao Ju had been standing beside He Yan and listening to him coldly. When she heard what he said, a mocking smile appeared on her lips. Fourth young Master Chu, you make it sound nice. Didn't you come all the way to Jiang just to snitch? When it comes to snitching, you have to distinguish between friend and foe. Fourth young Master Chu, you don't have to worry about the people in the Southern Mansion Army. He raised his eyebrows and said calmly, Even if her identity is exposed one day, I can still protect her. Chu Zhao was stunned and looked at He Yan. Miss He joined the Southern Mansion Army? He Yan replied. Yes. Xiao Ju had already promised him that if they pretended to be husband and wife to solve the Jiang incident, he would let her join the Southern Mansion Army. Although the current situation was not completely solved, it was up to his master to decide whether she would join the Southern Mansion Army or not. Since he said she would join, she would join. Chu Zhao's eyes moved slightly. After a while he smiled. Then I'll congratulate Miss He. No, Brother He. He Yan nodded. Xiao Ju looked at him calmly. If there's nothing else, fourth young Master Chu, please find a carriage for yourself. The space between husband and wife is not suitable for outsiders. Fourth young Master Chu, please go ahead. He did not hide his disgust for Chu Zhao. Chu Zhao was not angry. He only smiled and said, Military Governor Xiao, let's meet at the Chui residence. He then smiled at He Yan. He Yan awkwardly smiled back. Qi Wu drove the carriage over. He Yan and Xiao Ju got on the carriage. As soon as they sat down, they heard Xiao Ju's cold voice. Were you the one who competed with Zhao at the Shuajing horse farm? He Yan complained incessantly in his heart. It's here, it's here. When Chu Zhao told him about the horse farm, he almost forgot that Xiao Ju was also there at that time. Moreover, Xiao Ju also gave He Yinsheng a horse. He Yinsheng named it Xiang Xiang. Yes. He Yan did not wait for him to speak and said first, My brother loved the horse that Governor gave him. He cut grass and fed it every day. He never had the chance to thank Governor. At that time, if Governor did not come to our rescue, I don't know how Zhao would have made things difficult for our family. He Yan is unable to repay Governor's kindness. Xiao Ju's eyes were cold. So you recognized me early on, right? He Yan was speechless. It was not just early on, they knew each other in their previous lives. But how could he say it? You are the governor of the right military, General Feng Yan. Who in Dewei can be more handsome than you? I do know you. But at that time, you were high above the clouds and I was just a small ant beside your boots. Even if I knew you, you did not know me. Later, when you entered the military camp, I guess Governor had already forgotten about this matter. After all, Governor is a person of high status. How could he remember a small ant? He Yan leaned closer to him. How would I know that Governor still remembers this matter? She clearly knew that this fellow was full of lies and flattery, but when she saw her bright eyes and white teeth sitting beside her, and putting in her best performance, even if she was a little displeased, she also found it funny. Chu Zhao actually knew that this person was a woman before him. It sounded like he was kept in the dark, and was at a disadvantage. Xiao Ju looked away and said lightly, Have you met him again? No. He Yan quickly replied. I only met him twice when I was in Shuo capital. Then he complained. How would I know that it was such a coincidence? He was also at the racecourse at that time and saw my face. If I knew, I would have covered my face tightly and wore an iron mask. Look at how sharp his eyes are. He does not know who I am. You don't want him to see your face? Of course not. He Yan was confused. If I leave a loophole for others to exploit, who knows if something will happen? Xiao Ju laughed softly. You are not too stupid. Governor, He Yan asked. Do you think that fourth young master Chu will tell others about my identity? Although Chu Zhao said so, He Yan did not dare to believe him easily. Especially since this person's identity was mysterious. It was unknown whether he was an enemy or a friend. Now you know to be afraid? Not really, He Yan said. If he wants to tell, I will pack up and run away in advance. He Yan said and sighed. It is just that I have been in the Liang province guard for so long. I really can't bear to part with Governor. If I really have to part with Governor, it will be very difficult. What you can't bear to part with is the opportunity to enter the Southern Prefecture Army. Xiao Ju was unmoved. How can you think of me like this? He Yan said seriously. With my skills, I will be highly valued by any general. The reason why I can't forget about the Southern Prefecture Army is because it is the governor's army. It was probably due to Xiao Ju's constant flattery that unknowingly, He Yan was able to speak flatteringly without blushing or panting. Governor, what you said just now still counts, right? What did I say? That even if my identity is exposed and everyone knows that I am a woman, you can still protect me? Xiao Ju sneered. Don't worry. No matter how long the Chu clan's reach is, it is not as deep as the Southern Prefecture Army. However, his beautiful eyes focused on He Yan and he said calmly, Lady, he is so troublesome. Why should I waste my time and effort and take so many risks for you? Because we have seen the map together. It is not a normal relationship. He Yan answered calmly. Xiao Ju's calm face suddenly cracked. What did you say? Don't worry. He Yan put his index finger in front of his mouth and made a shushing gesture. He said, I will never tell anyone that the governor and I saw the map together on the first day you came to Jiang. The carriage stopped in front of the Chui residence. He Yan and Xiao Ju had just entered. Before they reached the courtyard, they saw Lin Shuanghe hurriedly walking towards them. When Lin Shuanghe saw the two of them, he closed his fan. You are finally back. Did you know? Fourth young master Chu came to Jiang. He Yan did not wait for him to finish. You already know? Lin Shuanghe was stunned. He arrived just a moment before you. I heard that Princess Mengji arranged for him to stay in the Chui residence. What is going on? He looked around and saw that there was no one around. He leaned closer and whispered, Is there a conspiracy? And younger sister Lin Shuanghe felt a headache coming on. You can't let Chu Xilan see you like this. What if your identity is exposed? We have already met in the prince's residence. He Yan comforted him. Fourth young master Chu also promised us that he will not tell anyone about this for the time being. Brother Lin, you can rest assured. You have already met. Lin Shuanghe looked at Xiao Ju and He Yan. He understood a little and asked, Princess Mengji asked you to come to the prince's residence to meet Chu Xilan, right? He Yan nodded. What is Chu Xilan doing in Jiang? Lin Shuanghe asked curiously. He's a young master from the Shuo capital. Wouldn't he come so far to sightsee? Why didn't he come earlier or later? You just arrived in Jiang, and he arrived right after you? What a coincidence. He didn't know about the Yudo yet. He Yan said, It's a long story. Where's my master? Mr. Lu just came back. Lin Shuanghe asked, What's wrong? He Yan looked at Xiao Ju. When I saved the Little Highness, my master also mentioned that he came to Jiang City to track down a group of Yudo. Since the news brought by fourth young master Chu is related to Yudo, why don't you call my master over as well? Once we compare the information, we may find something else. After a pause, she was afraid that Xiao Ju didn't trust Lu Buwang, so she said, My master is definitely not a bad person. Commander-in-Chief, you can rest assured. Xiao Ju nodded slightly. Call Mr. Lu and let's talk in the room. In the courtyard, The manservant moved the things unloaded from the carriage into the room one by one. From clothes to food, even a mattress and incense, everything was there. These things were all prepared for Chu Zhao before he came to Jiang by eldest Miss Su. If it were anyone else, they would have been touched and gratified by such considerate preparations. Chu Zhao sat in the room and looked at the small table that was gradually filling up, but his expression didn't change. Ying Xiang walked over. Due to the terrain and rivers, the women of Jiang were born with deep eyebrows and were more beautiful. Even so, Ying Xiang was still the most eye-catching one among them. She walked to Chu Zhao with a tea tray, put down the teapot, and poured a cup of tea for Chu Zhao. She said softly, "Young master, the room has been tidied up." Chu Zhao nodded and looked outside the courtyard. The room that Cui Yuezhi arranged was not far away from Xiao Ju's room. "Military Governor Xiao has just returned," Ying Xiang said. He entered the room with the swordsman in white and young Master Lin. Take it that they are talking together. As for what they were talking about, there was no doubt that it was related to him. However, he wouldn't take this matter to heart. Chu Zhao took a sip of tea and asked, "Do you know the whereabouts of Chai'anxi?" Chapter 147. Do you know Chai'anxi's whereabouts? Ying Xiang shook her head. I heard that Princess Mingji is now sending people to search for Chai'anxi's whereabouts. Chu Zhao smiled carelessly. Xiao Huaijin came to Jiang to find someone. After a pause, he asked the woman beside him, "Who is Lu Buwang?" I've never heard of this person's name before. On the surface, he's military governor Zhao's master. Where did Xiao Huaijin's master come from? Ying Xiang also nodded. But they seem to trust and value Mr. Lu very much. Chu Zhao put down the teacup in his hand. These are not important. The most important thing is to find Chai'anxi before Xiao Huaijin. I understand, Ying Xiang said hesitantly after a moment. But how do you plan to treat Miss He? Although he had already heard from Chu Zhao that He Yan was a girl, and his heart was already prepared, it was not until he saw He Yan's female body through the window that he felt it was real. It was really difficult to connect the petite and weak girl in front of her with the valiant and cold young man in her memory. Don't you think it's strange that Xiao Huaijin has a woman with him? Chu Zhao smiled slightly. I really want to know how much he trusts this woman. Ying Xiang lowered her eyes and didn't speak. Niao niao steam rose from the tea in the teacup and quickly escaped into the air, leaving no trace behind. On the other side, the people in the room were sitting separately. This is the Yudo's military defense map. He Yan handed the scroll to Lu Buwang. The fourth young master of Count Shijin's mansion brought news that the Yudo will attack Jiang in a few days, but I don't know if it's true or not. Master, take a look at this military defense map. Is there any problem? Lu Buwang looked at it for a moment, and put down the scroll in his hand. I don't know if this map is real or fake, but if Yudo really wants to attack Jiang, it will indeed start from the canal as depicted on the map. After all, the most important thing in Jiang City was this canal. Cutting off the canal meant cutting off the lifeline of the city. Mr. Lu, you once said that you were tracking Yudo to Jiang. Xiao Ju looked at Lu Buwang. Can you tell me the reason? Lu Buwang thought for a moment before saying, every year before and after the Water God Festival, I will go back to Jiang to take a look. This year, before they reached Jiang, they encountered a massacre outside Jiang City. Someone took advantage of the night to kill all the people in the village outside the city. He changed into the clothes of the people in the village and entered the city with a fake identity. One of the children who was lucky enough to escape told me about this. I originally thought that it was an enemy seeking revenge or killing people to rob money. However, when I was investigating, I found that these people weren't from Dawei. These Yudo disguised themselves as commoners and sneaked into the city. It's not something that can be done overnight. I can only find a few. I'm afraid that before this, many commoners outside the city have already been killed. There are also many disguised Yudo in Jiang City. Master, are you saying that many Yudo have already entered? Yen asked. Lu Buwang said. Yes, they have been planning for a long time. They were waiting for the Water God Festival to cause trouble and kidnap His Highness. However, their plan was disrupted by you, so they should soon take action again. Master Lu, do you mean that there will be a war in Jiang City soon? Lin Shuanghe said nervously. Isn't it very unsafe here? Don't worry. He Yan comforted him. Princess Mingji once mentioned to us that she would evacuate the commoners from the city to a slightly safer place in the next few days. Brother Lin will be fine with the commoners in Jiang City at that time. Only then did Lin Shuanghe feel a little relieved, but he immediately put on a righteous appearance. He said, "What do you mean by following the commoners in the city? How can I be such a coward? Naturally, I will advance and retreat together with my brothers and live and die together. Don't try to persuade me. I must be with you and won't live alone." He Yan was speechless for a moment before he said to Lu Buwang, "Master, Princess Mengji has handed the city gate guards to the commander-in-chief. Do you want to come and take a look?" "Ahi, have you forgotten?" Lu Buwang was a little helpless. "I only know how to set up formations and don't know how to fight." That was true. Lu Buwang knew Chimenduanjia, bow horse saber, and spear, but they were all his skills. Back then, when he taught her Chimenduanjia, He Yan studied it himself and used it to set up formations. Only then did he gradually develop his own set of skills. "You don't know how to fight?" Lin Shuanghe was very surprised. "My younger sister, he is so good at memorizing military books. I thought that a famous teacher produced a brilliant disciple. Why? Is my younger sister he a self-taught genius?" He Yan smiled awkwardly. "She's very talented. Maybe I was a female general in my previous life, so I can understand it easily." Xiao Ju sneered and didn't say anything. "In the next few days, I will continue to track down the whereabouts of that group of Yudo," Lu Buwang said. "If we find their heads, we may be able to solve a lot of problems. As for the city gate army of Jiang, I'll leave it to military governor Xiao." Lu Buwang looked at Xiao Ju. He now knew Xiao Ju's identity. The city gate army doesn't have the advantage in terms of numbers. Military governor Xiao, please take care of the people of Jiang. He seemed to have deep feelings for Jiang. Xiao Ju nodded. Everyone talked about the Yudo matter again. Xiao Ju would go to train the city gate army of Jiang City tomorrow. The time was very short, so it wasn't an easy task for him. Lu Buwang continued to track down the whereabouts of the Yudo. Lin Shuanghe didn't expect him to do anything, so he just needed to stay in the Cui mansion and wait for orders. As for He Yan, she became the most embarrassed one. She wanted to follow Xiao Ju to take a look at the city gate army, but Mu Hongjin didn't let her go. She didn't know if something would happen. She simply made another copy of the military defense map and planned to see if she could set up a new formation according to the terrain of Jiang overnight. If this military defense map was real, it would be twice the result with half the effort. If it was fake, she could find a loophole in it and wouldn't be fooled. After speaking, everyone was about to leave. As soon as they pushed the door open, they saw a beautiful maid standing under the tree in the courtyard outside the door. It was Chu Zhao's personal maid, Ying Xiang. She didn't know how long she had been standing here. When she saw everyone come out, she stepped forward and bowed to He Yan. "Miss He." He Yan returned the greeting. "Young master has something to say to Miss He," Ying Xiang said with a smile. "He's waiting in the front hall. Does Miss He have time?" He Yan looked back and saw Lin Shuanghe waving at her slightly, indicating that she shouldn't go. Xiao Ju looked calm, and no one could tell what she was thinking. Seeing this, Ying Xiang said with a smile, "Young master said that he might have some misunderstandings with Miss He before, so he wants to clarify things with Miss He in person. Last time, when we were in the Liangzhou guards, he didn't have time to say goodbye to you and left without saying goodbye. It was very rude of him. He hopes that you won't take it to heart. Today he'll take it as an apology." He Yan didn't take the small matter of leaving without saying goodbye to heart. There were so many things to do in the Liangzhou guards, so he didn't have the time to pursue these trivial matters. He was the young master of Count Shijin's residence. Yet he remembered it so clearly and spoke so politely. If she continued to be pretentious, it would seem that she didn't know what was good for her. Moreover, He Yan really wanted to know what identity Chu Zhao had now, and what position he had come to the Liangzhou guards. He also wanted to know whether the so-called dealing with Yudo was just an excuse or if he had other motives. Thinking of this, he cheerfully replied, "Okay." Lin Shuanghe's expression changed greatly. "Younger sister He. Thank you for your tolerance, young master." Ying Xiang was overjoyed. "Commander-in-chief, I'll go take a look first. He Yan said to Xiao Ju. You don't have to wait for me for dinner tonight. After saying this, he said goodbye to Lu Buwang. Master, I'll leave first. Lin Shuanghe still wanted to say a few more words of advice, but He Yan had already left with Ying Xiang. Lu Buwang still had matters to attend to, so he only bowed slightly to Xiao Ju and Ying Xiang before leaving. After they left, Lin Shuanghe asked Xiao Ju, You're letting her go just like that? Otherwise. That's Chu Xilan. Didn't younger sister he like him so much that she lost her soul? She was stood up by him, and even went to look at the moon alone. Such an irresponsible, heartless person actually came back to find my younger sister he. Just wait and see, he'll definitely play the same trick again, and use gentle attacks to move my younger sister he's heart. Isn't that good? Xiao Ju turned around and lazily mocked. The liar finally got what he wanted. Aren't you worried? Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and followed him closely. If Chu Xilan sees my younger sister he's stunning red makeup, he'll be beastly and do something bad to my younger sister he. What should I do? Xiao Ju entered the room, poured herself a cup of tea, and said casually, Do you have some misunderstanding about Chu Xilan's taste? How can that liar's red makeup be worthy of the word stunning? How is it not stunning? Lin Shuanghe was angry. Xiao Huijin, you can't compare your own face with the rest of the world. Xiao Ju didn't bother to pay attention to him and only said, Besides, did Chu Xilan do something bad to her? A trace of mockery flashed through his eyes. That guy can twist off Chu Xilan's head with his bare hands. Instead of worrying about her innocence, it's better to worry about Chu Xilan. Lin Shuanghe. He Yan bumped into Chu Xilan in the front hall. When Chu Xilan saw her, he smiled and stood up. Miss He. Fourth young Master Chu. He Yan returned the greeting. The sky had already darkened. The night in Jiang City was lively and bustling. Chu Zhao looked outside and said, Shall we go out for a walk? He Yan didn't know what He Yan had in mind, but there were too many people in the Chui residence, so it wasn't convenient for them to talk like this. He Yan said, Okay. The two of them walked out of the residence. Spring nights in Jiang were warm and harmonious. Along the banks of the river, hawkers carried lanterns and hawked their wares along the street. The pavilions were scattered randomly, and the scenery was beautiful. It could be said that between the alleys of the village, there were stringed instruments and singing, and there was a society where day and night were connected. However, such a gentle and bustling night was full of hidden murderous intentions. People came and went, and under the smiles of the hawkers, there were many Yudo who harbored evil intentions. When she thought about it this way, she felt that no matter how lively and interesting the scene was, it would become dull and boring. He Yan couldn't help but frown. Miss He, are you angry with me? Chu Zhao, who was beside her, asked softly. Why would I be? She was a little surprised. Then why did you frown when you went out with me? As if you had something on your mind. He Yan couldn't help but laugh. No, I was just thinking about the Yudo and was worried. After a moment of silence, Chu Zhao said, Miss He, you don't have to worry. Her Highness will arrange everything. Besides, there's still Military Governor Xiao, isn't there? He wasn't stingy with his praise for Xiao Ju. He Yan wanted to test him, so she asked, I thought that fourth young Master Chu didn't get along with our governor. Military Governor Xiao has some misunderstandings about me. Chu Zhao smiled. However, his position is slightly different from mine. We're just working for different masters. He actually admitted it just like that. He Yan was a little surprised. However, Military Governor Xiao and I are on the same page regarding the Yudo. Miss He, you don't have to worry. Chu Zhao said. I'm a citizen of Dawei. Naturally, I don't want to see Dawei's rivers and mountains be invaded by foreign tribes. He Yan nodded. That's natural. When the nest is overturned, no egg will remain unbroken. We should be united against foreign enemies. Is Miss He relieved after hearing what I said? He asked. He Yan asked, Why are you relieved? I won't hurt Military Governor Xiao. Miss He, you don't have to be wary of me because of Military Governor Xiao. He Yan laughed dryly. Fourth young Master Chu, you're overthinking. I'm not wary of you. Is that so? Chu Zhao smiled a little sadly. But ever since we met this time, you stopped calling me Brother Chu. You called me fourth young Master Chu. It sounds like you're deliberately drawing a line between us. That works too? Hien said. It's nothing. If you don't think it's good, I can call you Brother Chu again. Then can I call you a he? Hien was stunned for a moment. The young man's smile was especially gentle, like a charming and harmless orchid blooming in the night. In the spring night of Jiang, his robes were fragrant, and his face was handsome. The passers-by couldn't help but glance at him. He was really eye-catching. It was hard to say anything harsh to such a good-looking and good-tempered person. Hien hesitated for a moment and said, If you want to call me that, then just call me that. Chu Zhao's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. He continued to walk along the riverbank with Hien. He said, I haven't apologized to Ahe for what happened before. That day, I made an appointment to drink with you at Mount Baiyue, but something came up at the last minute, and I couldn't make it. The next day, I left early and didn't even have time to say goodbye to Ahe. Later, when I thought of this in Shuajing, I felt very regretful. Brother Chu, you don't have to take such a small matter to heart, Hien said. Moreover, you didn't do it on purpose. I'm not angry because of it. If it weren't for Chu Zhao, she wouldn't have gone to the foot of Mount Baiyue that night, and she wouldn't have waited for Xiao Ju. She also wouldn't have known that the person who saved her from the darkness on the mountaintop behind Yuhua Temple was Xiao Ju. Perhaps this was a blessing in disguise? Ahe didn't take it to heart because Ahe is broad-minded. Chu Zhao smiled. But I can't pretend that this didn't happen. I must apologize to Ahe. He looked forward. I'll give Ahe something. Hien was startled. What is it? Chu Zhao stretched out his hand. In the palm of his hand lay a small tassel. The tassel was decorated with a very delicate pomegranate flower carved from red jade. Below the tassel was a red tassel. Although it was small, it was very ingenious. Today, at the gate of the Wang Fu, I saw Ahe wearing a long whip at his waist. Chu Zhao looked at her gently. I was lucky enough to obtain a flower tassel. But I don't know martial arts, and I don't have a weapon. It's a pity that it's with me. But this flower tassel is very compatible with Ahe's long whip. Why don't Ahe try it and see if it'll be better? Hien subconsciously wanted to refuse. I can't accept a reward without any effort. Brother Chu, let's just forget about it. Besides, this thing doesn't look cheap. That red jade was small, and its color was translucent like the clouds. Who knew if it would be another several hundred gold? She always took things here and there and received small gifts there. Those who didn't know would think that she was really here to cheat. Ahe calls me Brother Chu, which means that he treats me as a friend. It's very common for friends to give gifts. Moreover, Ahe worries too much. This flower tassel isn't expensive, and this jade is fake. Ahe doesn't have to feel burdened. It's useless to leave this thing with me. Ahe doesn't want it, but he dislikes me. Or perhaps, deep down in his heart, he still sees me as an enemy? Even if his words were slightly accusing and wronged, when he said it, it was still gentle and calm. Hien hesitated for a moment. Is this pomegranate flower tassel really a fake jade? Chu Zhao smiled. He wants real jade. I may need to raise some money. Since it was fake jade, it wasn't very expensive. It should be more straightforward to accept it. Hien smiled. Then thank you very much, Brother Chu. She reached out and took out the purple jade whip from her waist. She tied the flower tassel to the purple jade whip's wooden handle. The black whip suddenly looked more lively and beautiful. It really matches Ahe's whip. Chu Zhao smiled. Courtesy demands reciprocity. Since Brother Chu gave me a flower tassel, I should also give Brother Chu something in return. In the end, Hien felt that if she didn't return the favor, she would feel that she was taking advantage of Chu Zhao. She said, if Brother Chu takes a fancy to anything in the night market today, I can give it to Brother Chu. After saying that, she reached her hand into her sleeve and touched her pitiful string of copper coins. She added weakly, however, I left in a hurry, so I didn't bring too much money. Brother Chu, you can choose what you want. After all, she didn't bring Lin Shuanghe with her today. She couldn't just buy whatever she wanted. Chu Zhao couldn't help but smile. He looked at her and said, okay. Hien followed him. The night market in Jiang was very lively. People were selling things at night. From snacks to rouge and face powder, old books and ancient books to rusty weapons. Everything was available. Both of them were good-looking. When they walked past a place, they received warm greetings. When they reached the end of the road in front, they saw a group of people surrounding a vendor. He Yan followed Chu Zhao to take a look, and saw that it was a sugar painter. The peddler was a young man. He wore a clean green robe and sat in front of the stall. In front of him was a stone slab that had been wiped clean. Beside him was a large pot that was simmering with sparkling red syrup. He scooped a spoonful of syrup from the pot with a big iron ladle, and poured it on the slate. His movements were very fast. The iron ladle moved up and down in his hand like a painting brush. The falling syrup outlined a complicated or exquisite pattern. Soon, it was cast into shape. Then he used a small spatula to scoop up the picture on the slate and stuck a bamboo stick on it. This is a sugar pancake. Ian was happy. I didn't expect Jiang to have it too. In the past, when she was in Shuajing, there was a temple fair every year. Due to her subtle identity, she was afraid that she would be exposed. Therefore, she didn't go to such crowded places if she could. Therefore, she never went to the temple fair. She could only wait for her sisters to come back from the temple fair and secretly eavesdrop on them talking about the lively scenes and new things at the temple fair. Sugar pancakes were the same. There was a master who made sugar pancakes in Shuajing. He was very good at it. Every time Yan heard them talk about it, she looked forward to it. Once she couldn't help but secretly beg Madame He to bring one for her. Perhaps Madame He saw how pitiful she was and how much she wanted it, so she really brought one for her from the temple fair. Yan still remembered that it was a picture of a bird. She couldn't bear to eat it, so she put the sugar figurine in the pen holder. However, the weather was hot, so it melted in 2 days. The syrup was sticky and it melted on the table. Madame He scolded her. At that time, she didn't think it was dirty. She just regretfully scooped it up with her hands. She thought that it would be better if the sugar painting could last longer. She did not expect to see something new when she was young, but she did not expect to see it in Jiang. Looking at this young man's craftsmanship, she thought that he was on par with the master in Shuajing. Yan pulled Chu Zhao and squeezed forward. They saw that there were many sugar paintings on the haystack at the side. They looked like auspicious flowers, birds, phoenixes, birds, and beasts. They were very lifelike. Chu Zhao glanced at Yan and suddenly smiled. I like this. He wants to give me something. Why don't you give me a sugar painting? You like this? What's so difficult about it? Yan was very generous. She waved her hand. Young man, what's the most expensive sugar painting you have here? There was a banner next to the sugar painting. The price was 2 copper coins each. She brought a lot of copper coins, so it should be enough. The stall owner smiled and said, the most expensive one is a flower basket. It costs 8 copper coins. Do you want one? What was a flower basket? However, choosing the most expensive one was definitely not wrong. Yan then asked Chu Zhao, Brother Chu, what do you think? Chu Zhao tried to hold back his laughter. That's good, young man. Yan took out 8 copper coins and said, please make a flower basket. Make it beautiful. The stall owner said, no problem. He scooped a spoonful of syrup from the pot and made a thin round cake. Then he cast a circle of sugar lines on the round cake and slowly drew a vertical line. Yan watched intently as the flower basket changed from a flat bottom to a rich and lively one. There was a basket frame and a handle. The stall owner was very honest and added a lot of flowers to the handle. Yan counted. There were Chinese roses, daffodils, chrysanthemums, peach blossoms, lotus blossoms. Flowers from different seasons were all piled into a basket. It was lively and gorgeous. Yan watched as the basket filled up bit by bit. Suddenly, she had an idea. She asked the stall owner, young man, I'm giving this flower basket to my friend. Can you write my friend's name on the basket? Of course. Chu Zhao paused and his smile faded. That's not necessary. What's wrong? Yan was puzzled. Your name is so beautiful. It's a pity that it's not written on the basket. Beautiful? Yes. Yan nodded. Zhao means bright. Xylan means vanilla. The person who gave you this name must love you very much. They hope that you have a noble character and a bright future. That's why they gave you such an elegant name. Chu Zhao was stunned. The girl had already turned around and said to the stall owner, "Young man, please write Xylan." Chapter 148. On the way back, Hien kept looking at the basket of flowers in Chu Zhao's hands. The flower basket looked very beautiful. The peddler wrote the 2 words Xylan with extra care. His words were elegant and refined, and when placed together with the various fragrances in the basket, they really brought out the best in each other. "Brother Chu, you must eat it as soon as you get back," Hien said. "Otherwise, with the weather in Jiang, it will melt very quickly." She had also bought a qilin-shaped one for herself, but she had already finished it. "I've tasted it. It tastes good and it's not too sweet." Chu Zhao smiled gently. "Thank you, Ahi. I'll be very careful when I get back." Hien was finally relieved. After they bought the sugar paintings, they walked back along the river bank. When there was nothing to talk about, Hien occasionally asked Su Zhiheng about his visit. "Brother Chu, how was it when you went back to attend your friend's wedding? Was it very lively?" Chu Zhao was slightly startled, but then he smiled and replied, "Yes, it was very lively. After all, she was General Fei Hong's sister. His Highness the Crown Prince even personally came to congratulate her." Hien was a little suspicious. His Highness the Crown Prince? Did the Crown Prince come to see Su Zhiheng get married for Su Zhiheng, He Rufei, or both? Was the Crown Prince also involved in the conspiracy between the He family and the Su family? Furthermore, did the Crown Prince know her identity? But Chu Zhao sighed again. Perhaps Master Su was deeply in love with his late wife. During the wedding he even cried. Hien said, "Ah." Perhaps her face was full of disbelief, but Chu Zhao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What's wrong? You don't believe that there are men in this world who are deeply in love?" Hien thought to himself. Of course, she believed that there were men in this world who were deeply in love. For example, He Sui, her current father. After Madame He passed away, he raised his 2 children alone. Lady He was so arrogant and willful. He Sui could spoil the little girl because she looked like his wife. It could be seen that there were people in the world who were deeply in love and had no regrets. But this person could be anyone, and it definitely wouldn't be Su Zhiheng. "It's not that I don't believe him." Hien concealed the ridicule in his eyes and said, "It's just that if he behaves like this, wouldn't his new wife be angry?" General Fei Hong and the other members of the He family were all deeply moved. So although it's lively, it's just that this wedding banquet is a little sad. Hien felt that among the many jokes he had heard this year, Chu Zhao's joke was the funniest. Would the He family be sad for her? If this was said to the pigs in the pigsty, the pigs would feel that their brains had been insulted. But when Chu Zhao talked about this matter, it was obvious that most people thought this way. If he did something bad, then he did it. But after he did it, he put on a sorrowful and pitiful appearance, and pretended to be a pitiful person who was rarely affectionate and righteous. It was really disgusting. He doesn't seem to agree with this one's words? Chu Zhao paid attention to her expression. Hien smiled and said, "It's nothing. I just feel that this old Master Su is very interesting." "What do you mean?" "If he really is deeply in love and can't forget his wife, even if His Majesty personally bestows the marriage, he can still refuse if he wants to. After all, he's a man." Hien lightly mocked. "If he's a woman, it's normal for her to be unable to decide her own marriage fate. Brother Chu, you've heard of young masters who snatch by force. You've heard of evil tyrants who force women into prostitution. And you've heard of beastly fathers who sell their daughters for glory. But have you ever heard of a woman who does this? From what Brother Chu said just now, that old Master Su is like a weak woman who was forced to get married. That newly married young Mistress Su is like an evil person who forced him to marry her. What does this mean? If he doesn't want to get married, no one can drag him to the wedding hall. If he doesn't want to consummate his marriage, could it be that young Mistress Su can still take him by force? If he still continues to be obsessed with his deceased wife in the future, what will the new young Mistress Su do? I feel that it's not fair to that person. This friend of Brother Chu's is also a bit hypocritical." She spoke bluntly. He Xining was her younger sister from the same father and mother. Even though she hated the He family, He Xining had never done anything to her. Hien couldn't love her, nor could he hate her. He could only treat her as a stranger. Any sane person who heard this would only think that Su Zhiheng was the one who was in the wrong. It wasn't enough to destroy one member of the He family. Now he had to send in another victim. How cold-blooded and ridiculous. Chu Zhao was stunned for a moment. Then he suddenly smiled and stopped walking. He cupped his hands and said to He Yan, "Is this one narrow-minded? Or is it that brother He, as a woman, can stand in a woman's shoes and empathize? It's just that no one has ever thought of standing in their shoes. He is very different from ordinary women." He Yan looked at her and asked, "How is he different?" Chu Zhao continued to walk forward. His voice was still very gentle as he said, "Most women, even when faced with this kind of predicament, have long been numb and indifferent. They don't think as much as he does. He is thinking for them right now, but it's very likely that they're enjoying themselves and will blame you for meddling in other people's business." He Yan smiled and said, "Brother Chu's words sound a bit high and mighty." Chu Zhao's smile froze for a moment. "Why do you say that? The imperial court is a man's imperial court. The major affairs of the world are the major affairs of the world. Even when it comes to reading books and going to the battlefield, it's also men who have a unique style. The world praises men as heroes, but at most, they praise women as beauties. It's really unreasonable. Men have taken advantage of the world, but in turn, they blame women for being numb and not wanting to make progress. If this isn't high and mighty, then what is it? Brother Chu thinks that I'm very different from ordinary women because I've read books, walked out of the house, and even rebelled against the orthodoxy and entered the army. There aren't many women like me in the world. But if you let those women be like me and see the snow of the Liangzhou Guard, the water of Jiang City, the long moon of the desert, and the rivers, seas, and mountains, do you think they'll be willing to be trapped in a house that's filled with jealousy? Do you think they'll still be complacent, numb, and ignorant?" Ian smiled. At this moment, her smile carried a bit of ridicule. It was actually somewhat similar to Xiao Ju's. "I think the men in the world are worried about this point, so they've set up many ridiculous rules to bind women. They've used the 3 cardinal principles and 5 constant principles to break their wings. They've also used those groundless virtuous wives and beauties to judge them. The more ignorant they are, the more the men feel at ease. It's clearly their fault, but they still have to say, 'Look, women are shallow.' Because they also know that once a woman has the chance to choose, she'll definitely not be willing to become a vase in the backyard waiting for her husband to feed her. Those outstanding women will become generals, swordsmen, scholars, and aides. They'll compete with them for the glory of the world, and they won't necessarily win." The girl's eyes were clear and bright like the spring water in Jiang City. They were transparent and clear, and one could see them clearly. They were clean and translucent, as if they could reflect the most brilliant sunlight. Chu Zhao was momentarily stunned. He had always been eloquent and would never make the atmosphere awkward, but at this moment, he actually didn't know what to say. It was as if no matter what he said, he couldn't refute the person in front of him. It was clearly laughable, overconfident, and naive to the point that it made people feel annoyed. It was awe-inspiring righteousness, but it actually reflected a person's shadow. There was nowhere to hide in the darkness. Ian also felt that it was unfair. Although pretending to be He Rufei brought a lot of pain to her life, at the same time, it also allowed her to see many things that women couldn't see in their entire lives. If she didn't pretend to be He Rufei, she wouldn't have known that compared to women, men could do so much more. If you were talented in literature, you could become a scholar with a stomach full of scriptures. If you were outstanding in martial arts, you could become a general with outstanding military achievements. Even if you were mediocre in everything, you could still be the most ordinary person on the street. To put it bluntly, even in Lutong village, women were gambling prostitutes, while men were gambling customers. It was because she later became young Mistress Su, and had been both a man and a woman that she knew that the world treated men and women differently. It wasn't that men didn't suffer, but their suffering could become the cornerstone to judge themselves. As for women's suffering, they waited their entire lives for men's affirmation. They were all reincarnated as humans, so who was more noble than the other? The funny thing was that some men even looked down on women from the bottom of their hearts. It made people speechless. After she finished speaking in one breath, she realized that Chu Zhao didn't say anything for a while. She secretly thought, Could it be that my words offended Chu Zhao? But on second thought, if she offended him, then so be it. In any case, he didn't have the strength to truss a chicken. Even if he fought, he wouldn't be able to beat her. Brother Chu, what I said just now was a bit too impatient. He Yan said with a smile. I hope Brother Chu won't mind my lack of manners. I won't. Chu Zhao looked at her with a strange look in his eyes. He's heart is admirable. Chu Zhao is ashamed of his inferiority. In the future, I won't say such nonsense like today. He's words. I will always keep them in my heart. Chu Zhao was really a gentleman. Just now she had said a lot of things, but he was still very gentle like a spring breeze. He Yan smiled. Then let's go quickly. Chu Zhao nodded and smiled in response. The two of them continued to walk on the road back to Chui Manor. He Yan lowered his head and secretly sighed in his heart. Chu Zhao and Xiao Ju were ultimately different. When dealing with women, they both thought that women were weak and couldn't protect themselves. However, the former's judgment had a trace of negation and condescension, while the latter's treatment of the female corpse in the backyard of the Sun family in Liangzhou City was more of pity. As a general, he should be magnanimous, upright, calm, and brave. But more importantly, he should have a heart of pity for the weak. When He Yan and Chu Zhao came back, it was already very late. Chu Zhao's courtyard was a bit further away than He Yan's courtyard. When they reached the door, Chu Zhao said, he should also rest early today. Brother Chu, remember to eat it early. He Yan was still thinking about his candy basket painting, so he reminded him. He looked at the flower basket in his hand, shook his head and smiled. Definitely. He Yan watched him leave, then turned around and wanted to go back to the room. When she looked back, she saw a person standing in the small pavilion under the long corridor, looking at her with a smile. His white clothes fluttered in the wind. It was Lu Buwang. Master hasn't rested yet? Ian walked over and asked. She rarely saw Lu Buwang these days at night. I came out to get some fresh air. Lu Buwang looked at her. Did you go to buy candy paintings? Ian nodded. Fourth young Master Chu helped me hide my identity. After thinking about it, I still gave him something. I was kind to him, so he couldn't go around telling others my secret. Candy paintings in Jiang City are quite cheap. I gave him the most expensive one. It's at least 10 copper coins in Shuajing City, but only 8 copper coins here. It's cheap and good. Lu Buwang smiled and looked at her. Ehi, you're much more lively now than before. Yan was stunned. When she met Lu Buwang in her previous life, it was the most difficult time. She had just escaped from the peaceful days in Shuajing City and came to the cruel and bloody military camp. She had many secrets, so she was always a little cautious. Even though she occasionally showed her unbridled side when she was with Lu Buwang on the mountain, most of the time, she tried not to cause trouble for others. Now that she thought about it, it seemed that since she became Lady He, she had unconsciously let go of herself a lot. For example, going out to buy candy paintings with Chu Zhao today was absolutely impossible in the past. Was it because she was a woman now, or was it because she could do whatever she wanted without the restrictions of the He family? And she didn't have to worry about the secret under the mask being seen by others? Isn't it good to be like this now? He Yan said with a smile. It doesn't have to be steady. Lu Buwang said. It's good to be like this. When he said this, he looked a little disappointed. No one knew what he was thinking. He Yan wanted to ask, but when she saw Lu Buwang's indifferent gaze, she swallowed the words back. Lu Buwang seemed a little sad. The moon in spring was not as bright as the one in autumn. It was hazy and cute. Lu Buwang's gaze fell on the corners of his little disciple's mouth, but another figure appeared in his mind. Mu Hongjin. Back then Mu Hongjin was also like this. Her eyes were clean and bright, and occasionally there was a trace of wisdom in them. Her red dress was also delicate, and there were always some flowers and birds embroidered on the corners of her dress, which was exquisite and beautiful. The young girl always had 2 long braids with silver bells under them. When she walked, the bells would make a pleasant tinkling sound. Sometimes, before he got close, he would hear the sound of the bells and know that she had come. At that time, he had such a tail following him every day, which was really annoying. He had said many times that he hoped the two of them would part ways. Every time, Mu Hongjin would pout and immediately cry. No matter how hard Lu Buwang's heart was, he was not good at dealing with a girl's tears. So every time, she easily resolved it. In the end, he had tacitly agreed that this person was a sticky candy that he couldn't get rid of. He let her follow him and cause trouble for him. Mu Hongjin knew how to enjoy life. She had brought a lot of money, but in less than half a month, she squandered it all. At that time, Lu Buwang didn't know that Mu Hongjin was the beloved daughter of King Mengji, and he only despised her extravagant and lascivious life. She didn't care what Lu Buwang thought of her. She had so much money, and she insisted that he enjoy it with her. Half a month later, Mu Hongjin had spent all her money, so she had to eat with Lu Buwang. In the end, they slept in the simplest kind, and the food was also very ordinary. Mu Hongjin didn't have money to buy the trinkets on the street. After half a day, she protested to Lu Buwang. "Young hero, can't we have a good meal?" No. Lu Buwang didn't have much money. The 7 disciples of Taoist Yunji went down the mountain to gain experience. Although it was said that they went down the mountain to gain experience, in fact, they were just experiencing the secular world. As for what they did in daily life, his senior fellow apprentices gave him some of the work they had received before. To put it bluntly, they took the money from others and had to eliminate disasters for others. It was just that their sect was not allowed to do evil or curry favor for personal gain. So much so that in the end, what they really did was to help the tenants of the farmstead find their lost sheep, or help a married girl send a secret letter back to her maiden home. These kinds of trivial matters, and the money they received was also very little. Sometimes, they even had to help people write letters to their families. They didn't refuse anyone and accepted everything. A cold and otherworldly young man in white walked on the path of the farmstead with a lost sheep. The scene was a little funny. Mu Hongjin laughed at him. "What kind of sect do you belong to? Why do you have to do everything? Why don't you follow me?" You what?" Lu Buwang asked her angrily. Mu Hongjin rolled her beautiful eyes. "I'll pay you more than he does." Lu Buwang was so angry that he didn't want to speak. But it was true. After all, he hadn't finished the task his senior fellow apprentice gave him. Because he was doing these small things, he didn't get much money. If he was alone, it would be fine. But now that Mu Hongjin was with him, he had spent all his money. One person had become 2 people. In meals, life was so tight that he wished he could split a copper coin in half to spend it. It could be seen that Mu Hongjin was also trying her best to adapt to this rough life. She made a fuss for a few days, but when she saw that Lu Buwang was really a little angry, she didn't dare to say anything more. She honestly lived a simple life with Lu Buwang. But her habit of wanting to buy everything she saw in her bones still hadn't changed. Lu Buwang still remembered that one day, they met an old woman selling flowers beside a tea house outside Jiang City. There were 2 bamboo baskets and a carrying pole in front of the old woman. And the bamboo baskets were full of wild chrysanthemums. They were slender and lovely, light pink and white. They were also very cheap. They should have been picked directly from the foot of Qiyin Mountain. Mu Hongjin leaned over to take a look. Seeing this, the old woman said with a smile, "Young master, buy me a flower to wear." "No need." Okay. The 2 of them spoke at the same time. Lu Buwang gave Mu Hongjin a warning look, and Mu Hongjin pursed her lips aggrievedly. The old woman smiled, picked a flower from the bamboo basket, and gave it to Mu Hongjin. "You're pretty, so this flower is for you. Wear it on your head. It's very beautiful." Mu Hongjin took it happily. She said sweetly with a smile, "Thank you, Granny." In this case, Lu Buwang couldn't just leave, so he took out a copper coin from his sleeve and handed it to the old woman. No. The old woman looked at him with a smile. "The little girl is cute. I like her. Young master, just treat her better in the future." Lu Buwang turned his head. Mu Hongjin got the flower and put it on her ear happily. She asked Lu Buwang, "Is it beautiful?" Lu Buwang said uncomfortably, "It has nothing to do with me." Mu Hongjin glared at him, squatted down, and looked at the jewelry and cosmetics in the carrying pole. After a while she picked up a silver bracelet and exclaimed, "This is beautiful." It was a very simple silver bracelet. It seemed to have been roughly polished by someone, and even the edges were not very smooth. On the edge of the bracelet, A circle of life like wild chrysanthemums was carved, so it looked fresh and lovely. This is so beautiful, Mu Hongjin praised. This is called a happy bracelet. It was carved by my husband and me together, the old woman said with a smile. Give one to your sweetheart and wear it for the rest of your life. Young master, why don't you buy one for me? It will last forever. Did you hear that, young hero Lu? Mu Hongjin begged. Quickly give me one. Lu Buwang looked at her coldly, took the silver bracelet from her hand, and put it back into the carrying pole. Then he said coldly to the old woman, She's not my sweetheart. A trace of disappointment flashed through Mu Hongjin's eyes. In the end, she didn't take the silver bracelet again and muttered, How do you know that I'm not your sweetheart? How do you know? Yes, how do I know? The young man was proud and didn't understand that the joy of youth came quietly. By the time he understood, it had already become a calamity and there was no way to avoid it. Later, many years had passed. Lu Buwang often thought that if he had bought the silver bracelet in front of Mu Hongjin and put it on her hand that day, they wouldn't have come to that point. As the old woman said, they wouldn't have been separated for the rest of their lives. It was ridiculous that he also believed that strange forces and gods were predestined. The moonlight sprinkled on the ground, forming a layer of white frost. The bell in his memory gradually faded away, and only the wind in Jiang City that had been separated for many years fell in his ears. It was lonely and a little cold in his heart. Do you like Xiaoju? The unexpected voice interrupted He Yan's contemplation. He Yan turned his head in surprise. Lu Buwang retracted his gaze and looked at her with a knowing smile. He repeated again, Ehi, do you like Xiaoju? No. He Yan subconsciously retorted. After a while, she asked again, Master, why do you say that? Haven't you noticed? Lu Buwang said lightly, when you're around him, you're very relaxed. You trust him more than you trust me. He Yan was stunned. Did she? Maybe she did. Whether it was in the previous life or this life, she might have many misunderstandings about Xiaoju's appearance in her heart. Whether he was indifferent or bad, she had never doubted that Xiaoju would hurt her from the beginning to the end. He Yan, who seemed to be careless about everything, always maintained a sense of vigilance in her heart. She didn't let go of this vigilance when facing Lu Buwang, Su Zhiheng, He Rufei, and even He Sui and his son who had no attacking power in the He family. But she always trusted Xiaoju. It's not time or experience that makes you so relaxed now. It's him. Lu Buwang's voice was gentle. Ahi, do you still want to deny it? Ian didn't speak. After a while, she raised her head and looked at the moon hanging on the roof. The moon was big and white, and its silver light sprinkled over the whole yard, gently watching the people in the night. Master, look at the moon in the sky, she said slowly. It can shine on the backyard of the rich and the ditch in the wilderness. But you can't catch it, right? I can't catch the moon, nor can I make the moon come for me, so I can just stand here and look at it from afar.